Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of Budget City Council, Tuesday, April 23rd, 6 p.m. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Foster Jr.
Here.
Councilmember Robles.
Present.
Councilmember Hernandez. Yes. Councilmember Burnett. Yes. Mayor Gilliam.
We have a forum. Can you please stand with me for the pledge of allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Because we're still. You saw that.
Okay, next item is a moment of thanks, communication, or condolences. Is there any council member that wishes to highlight one of those areas? Okay. Next item is agenda review. At this time, the city council will review the agenda order of business. Would any council member wish to change the order of business?
I'm okay.
You'll notice Patrick running around here. We have a council member that is an expert at audio video, so you'll see him squirting back and forth. So thank you for putting up with that. The next item for business is the ceremonial calendar, and that's a DMV Donate Life Month proclamation. Proclamation DMV Donate Life Month, April 2024. Whereas organ, eye, tissue, marrow, and blood donation are life-saving acts recognized worldwide as expressions of compassion to those in need. And whereas more than 110,000 individuals nationwide and more than 23,000 in California are currently on the national organ transplant waiting list. And on average, 22 people die each day while waiting. And whereas the need for donated organs is especially urgent in Hispanic, Latino, and African American communities. And whereas a single individual's donation of heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, pancreas, and small intestine can save up to 8 lives. Whereas donation of tissue can save and heal the lives of more than 75 others. Whereas organ donors saved more than 46,000 lives last year, the most ever. And whereas any person can register to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor, regardless of age, medical conditions. And whereas being a registered donor does not impact the quality of life-saving medical care a person receives in an emergency. And whereas California residents can sign up with the Donate Life California donor registry online at any time by visiting donatelifecalifornia.org, or for Spanish speakers, donatevidacalifornia.org. And whereas California residents can sign up to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor when applying for or renewing their driver's license or ID cards at the California Department of Motor Vehicles. And whereas California residents interested in saving a life through living kidney donation may visit livingdonationcalifornia.org. Now therefore be resolved by virtue and authority vested in me as mayor, and on behalf of the city of Guadalupe, I do hereby recognize the month of April 2024 National Donate Life Month, and hereby proclaim DMV Donate Life Month in the city of Guadalupe. And in doing so, we encourage all Californians to check yes online, or when applying for or renewing a driver's license or ID card at the DMV. Thank you for that. This is very important. So if you're not if you're inclined, if you're not, registered to donate, please do so. Thank you. How you doing? Go ahead. You got it. Thank you.
Thank you for the proclamation. This weekend, it will be displayed in Los Angeles at the annual Run Walk for Donate Life. And then it'll end up, probably in about a month at the Santa Maria DMV where it'll be displayed. So I do appreciate it. Last year, I was at the Run Walk with, and I'm going to show you this t-shirt. This t-shirt is showing the lady whose kidney I have.
Wow.
Right, her family and other people that are connected with organ donation. This is Vivian. She passed away suddenly about 9 years ago, Memorial Day weekend. Actually, Mother's Day weekend 9 years ago, and Memorial Day weekend, I ended up with her kidney. I ended up with her kidney. She also donated the other kidney, liver, lungs, and heart for 4 other people. So she has survived in our life for a long time. I've honored her by doing this because it's just a short drive to Santa Barbara. And Donate Life still honored her this last year at the Rose Bowl at their float, which they had a picture of her on the Rose Bowl.
Wow.
Some positive things that are going on right now is true, we do have a big waiting list for organ donations. One thing happening is somebody just got a pig heart, pig kidney, and this survived. It'll take a while before that works for everybody. So there's still a big waiting list. Another item going on is Donate Life, One Legacy. I'm a volunteer, is moving an office to Carpinteria. It's still a ways away, but it's a lot closer than Azusa. Everybody here knows where Azusa is. It's in LA. The other thing going on is the last study that was done showed that 94% of everyone in the study said, yeah, I'm in favor of organ donation. But only 54% had actually signed up for the pink dot. So what they've done is, especially since the DMV, now you only go every 5 years. Last year, the state of California changed the rules so that, the next year at your California income tax, you'll also be asked the same question as you do at the DMV, if you'd like to donate. So I'm happy to receive this. I'll send some pictures this weekend so you'll see it. And thank you very much for your. As a side note, I'm going to involve with a group called Project Opioid. That's close enough. And I've got to go on a Zoom meeting that's kind of based back east. So I'm trying to get that solved. So that's why I thought I'll leave it early. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, presentation, master plan for aging in Guadalupe, Margaret White, project coordinator. Margaret, thank you for being here.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for having me. Oh, good, you have the slides. That will help keep me on track.
We're testing our new.
Do it. Someone, that's like. Okay.
Very good. So, now you can ring.
For now.
It's icing on the cake after that, but technology's hard, it's fine. Well, again, thank you so much for having me here. My purpose in being here is to just hear a little bit about this new master plan for aging. And Mayor Julian is already familiar with some of it. He heard me speak on this previously. And Councilmember Hernandez is quite familiar. She's on our advisory committee. But for the rest of you, I'm going to give you a little bit of background and then talk a little more specifically about what cities within our county will have the opportunity to do as part of this master plan for aging. So excited to be here and connect with you, and I'll talk a little bit, and then hopefully I will kind of inspire your thoughts and questions about what in this plan makes sense for Guadalupe and an age-friendly future for Guadalupe. Next slide, please. Oh, I have it. Excellent. Got it. Now let's see if I can figure out how to.
Oh, you got it.
Okay, perfect. Got it. So the master plan for aging began with the state of California 2.5–3 years ago. And it is really a blueprint for aging across the lifespan. Although we call it the plan for aging, it impacts people of all ages in that it's helping family members, friends, caregivers of older adults and people with disabilities. And also helping everybody in the room who hopes to reach that status at some point in their life. So we're really all invested in this plan to one degree or another. It is emphasizing things that we can do to design our community to be more age and disability friendly. And if we do a good job with this plan, it will open the door to future resources and funding. Because I'm going to go through a little bit of data in a moment, and you'll see that addressing the needs of older adults is only going to become a bigger and bigger issue over the next decade. So we want to position ourselves as best as we can to be able to utilize the resources that are coming down the pipeline. The wrong way. Okay. One thing that has been commented on about the master plan for aging is its whole goal. There are 5 goals, and you will see looking at them that they are truly aspirational and not anything that we're going to achieve overnight. Our hope is to be able to make some baby steps towards these goals. So the 5 goals are housing for all ages and stages, health reimagined, in other words, to be able to really meet people's needs with the kind of quality health care that they desire. Inclusion and equity, so that we don't have older adults and people with disabilities isolated in the community. Caregiving that works. You may have heard some data around caregiving that as our older population grows and our middle-aged population is shrinking, we don't have enough people working in the field of care. So this is a very significant area for us to address. And lastly, this will be no surprise to anybody in this room, but affording aging is a huge and important goal in the master plan for aging. So each of these things is not just a simple goal in and of itself. Each one has multiple strategies and multiple initiatives. If you take housing as an example, this may not be intuitive. It wasn't intuitive to me, but housing also includes transportation, how we get to and from the places that we live. Emergency response, how they get to us when we need them and what kinds of response is available to us. Outdoor space, to enjoy nature and to meet with our friends and to gather in groups. And even climate resilience falls under the umbrella of housing. So as you can see, each one of these is really a huge undertaking. And again, our goal is to create some initial baby steps that will move us in the right direction in these issues. Uh-oh, what did I do? There we go. The state began this initiative in 2021. And listed on the screen are some of the things that we are already seeing the benefits of here in Santa Barbara County. Funding has been provided to the tune of $9.5 billion to address some of these issues which were deemed to be of greatest need and likely to hold great value and benefit to the communities. So things like we now have more resources in the field of behavioral and mental health. There are now for senior resources in counseling and case management that didn't exist before. Digital connection, and I don't know if Guadalupe has noticed or experienced some of the benefit of that, but that is happening countywide, improving digital connection so that people can stay connected. Our senior nutrition program, our mental health program, which has what's called enhanced care now. So in addition to seeing the doctor and the nurse, somebody who's on that enhanced care program might also be working with a social worker or a caseworker to make sure that their housing is secure. And it's really hard to take care of your diabetes if you're at risk of losing your housing, as an example. And the last one on the list, Aging and Disability Resource Center, is a combination of community resources to become a port for people to find information. And this is one of the things that we hear from people more often than many other concerns is they know that there are resources out there and they don't know who to call. So that's something that we're trying to make more prominent. And as the state has funded each of these things, part of what we want to do with our local plan is leverage them to the greatest benefit for our community. This gives you an example of some of the things that have already occurred locally. So within our county, a group called Adult and Aging Network has been working on some of these goals since 2021. Actually, I'd like to acknowledge my colleague, Barbara Finch is here from the Adult and Aging Network. He's our director of that umbrella organization. And many of your local community resources are involved in it. And then last year, that group and the Independent Living Resource Center worked together to apply for a grant, and we were one of 15 counties to get funded to create our own local master plan for aging. So something more tailored to this area than just what the state is doing. So that was huge for us and set us on this path to create this plan, which we will have in about a year from now. And we have, in that short time since the grant was received, we've created a phenomenal advisory committee, really a powerful force to move forward these goals and initiatives. And we have begun a community assessment, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as the evening goes on, because that's something that would be of benefit right here in Guadalupe. And our plan will be done and ready by the end of March 2025. So it's a fast moving project. Okay. At one time I had a whole lot of data in this presentation and I boiled it down to one slide because I don't want to spend all evening talking about data. I want to talk more about what we can actually do. But there is very compelling data for why we're doing this, why we're thinking about this. Our population of older adults is going to double by 2030 from what it was in 2010. It is one of the biggest demographic shifts we've ever experienced. In 2030, 1 in 4 people in our county will be age 60 or older. So that's very significant. And to be honest, we don't have in place all of the resources and tools that we would like to have for meeting those needs. We know that in that population, that large population of people over 60, 1 in 3 struggle with poverty. 1 in 3 live with a disability. 1 in 5 have a chance of developing dementia. 7 in 10 need some kind of help, either at home or they go to a care facility of some kind. And it's not news to anybody in this room that housing is a real challenge. It's hard to get, it's hard to afford. It's one of our biggest challenges in the state of California and in this area. So that's my summary of data, and I'm happy to dive deeper into the data with anybody. But I think that gives you a sense of kind of the massiveness of the change that is already taking place and going to continue for a number of years. Okay. Not to get too bogged down in data, there are actually some really good models, things that we can do to address those concerns. And one of them is what we call age-friendly communities. And age-friendly communities, turns out, are actually friendly to people of all ages. When we ask older adults what they want in their community, these are the kinds of things that we see. Walkable neighborhoods, many transportation options, sort of maybe an individual car is an absolute necessity, access to quality services, ways to engage with other people in community activities, and housing that's affordable and adaptive as people age. These are the same kinds of things that people of all ages end up telling us they want. This is what families want as well, is to be able to walk in their neighborhood and to the grocery store or a coffee shop or, you know, whatever places are part of their regular routine, to have options within their neighborhood and to feel safe in a neighborhood. None of this is obviously going to be done overnight, but as planners and decision makers, we can start taking the first steps to make those things built into the future of our community and here in Guadalupe. So one of the examples that is often talked about, and I'll throw it out because I think it's a really good one, of when I say things are good for all ages, things are desired by older adults, but also benefit families and people of all ages. One of the classic examples of that are those curb ramps. I know you're going to be talking about street work here, and I bet that's part of that plan. Curb ramps, many of you may know, originally came about for veterans who were coming home from war with disabilities. And the curb ramp made it possible for them to get around the community more easily. But who else benefits from having a curb ramp? People with strollers, people who have knees that are getting a little achy or a little less stable. They benefit a really large swath of community. And that's just kind of one obvious example of things that are good for older adults and also good for other parts of the community. There we go. So we talked about this age-friendly community, and there is a specific program through the American Association of Retired Groups, AARP. They've been doing this for 15, 20 years, I believe. They have a program that a city or a county or a state can join and get resources and learn how to make their community a little more age and disability friendly. And California has already joined as a state. There are over 800 cities in the country that have joined. And we have discussed that Guadalupe would actually be a very good community to take on this initiative. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the initiative itself. But, you know, full transparency, I'll have 2 asks of you tonight, and this is one of them. for Guadalupe to decide if that's something they'd like to learn more about, what it is to be a designated age-friendly community, and if that is something that would be of benefit to them. And I think it probably would be. So when a community decides that they want to join this age-friendly process, this is a 5-year rollout of what that is. Initially, there is a very simple application, and it comes with a requirement of a letter from the mayor, most likely, stating that the community wants to embark on this project. And the application, as I say, it's quite simple, and it's actually something that we on the master planning committee can assist with. In the first year, communities are required to conduct an assessment. So this is the real benefit, well, one of the benefits of thinking about this at this time, because on the master plan for aging committee, we are already required to do a community assessment. So this is something where we can assist you. We're going to be doing an assessment. We can do part of it here in Guadalupe and help you through that first year requirement. So my second ask is actually going to be, regardless of what Guadalupe decides about becoming an age-friendly community, we would like to know what the residents of Guadalupe have to say about these concerns. And so I am looking for ways to get that survey and maybe even a focus group out into this community. So my second ask to you is to help find the avenues to make that possible. That's probably a conversation for a later date. But I do want you to know that should you decide to do this age-friendly program, you'll have our support with that assessment. And then the residents here go on to create their own action plan, put that plan in place, take a look at it, see if it's working or not. And just to give you a sense of what that might look like, it does not have to be a big, grandiose, expensive item. When you go into the resources that are provided about what other communities are doing, it can be a very simple project, as long as it's moving you in the direction that you want to go. I mentioned earlier that many people struggle with, where do I go for information? There's all kinds of resources out there in the community, but I don't know who to call. And this is something that some communities have done as their action plan, is they put information out about who to call. And, you know, we can select 1 or 2 key components that would work well here in Guadalupe and promote that in an educational message. That might be a 1-year action plan. Other kinds of things that communities have done. I was reading about a community recently that had done some park improvements, and they got a little bit of money from an AARP grant to do some signage to encourage people to use the park and understand the health benefits of being outside and being active. And that was their action plan. It was fairly straightforward, and they were provided limited resources to make it fundable, possible from a budget standpoint. So lots of different options. One of the things that I like about this AARP program is that their goal is to really have you make it your project. There are communities that have done very grand things, and there are communities that have done very simple things. And there are quite a few communities, if you look at the map, that are still in the studying phase. And maybe some of them have been there for a long time. That's okay too. It's got to be your initiative on your timeline. But to me, that's what makes it doable and a good fit for the community. It's not an organization telling you, you must do A, B, and C. It's an organization that's going to provide you with some resources to try and figure out what's going to actually be best result in your community you want to tackle. So that is the AARP model of an age-friendly community. And this too, as part of the master plan for aging, we need to support the communities that choose to go this route. And so you'll have our assistance for at least the next year. And as I say, if we do a good job with our plan, our anticipation is that that will lead to resources to continue to work and do additional work. I'm not perfect with this.
You're doing great.
Yeah, you are.
Okay, a couple of things that are beneficial about joining the AARP program. You do get a lot of resources, technical assistance, support. There are opportunities to apply for small amounts of funding that are pretty accessible. I'm gonna jump down to the bottom of this slide, because I think this is an interesting data point. Of all of the almost 900 communities that have done something with the age-friendly crossing, 58% of the communities have advanced some kind of a policy change. And again, that would be something that you determined you wanted for your community. 86% of the communities report that they overcome some kind of a barrier in this process. They see some community improvement. So it is working. Their data is pretty impressive as far as they're actually making some strides forward. This is kind of the last thing I'm going to touch on. I did provide you with a PDF of what's called the AARP Livability Index. So they have created an index for each community. And I'm just going to highlight a few things that are in the report on Guadalupe. First off, the thing that I always tell everybody is that everybody gets an overall score. The overall score for the city of Guadalupe is 53. Don't think that's a bad score, because it would have been a failing grade when you were in elementary school. On this scale, the scale is 0 to 100, but nobody gets 100. The highest score among all of the cities is 72. And at 53, you're above the average, which is 48. So it's a different kind of scale. And part of the reason that nobody gets 100 is there are 7 categories here: housing, neighborhood, transportation, environment, health, engagement, and opportunity. And we can talk a little bit more about each of those. But your score comes from each of those categories. No community is going to do perfectly in all of those areas. And actually, Guadalupe has a couple that they're really excelling in, so we'll look at that as well. But you know, when you see this little, kind of looks like a speedometer, the lowest score is a 23. That's the lowest city. So you're well above the low end and above the average. And we'll look at the categories to see a little more about how they came up with that score. So each of these categories has its own score. And to me, this is where it gets really interesting. And I've looked at our county report, and I've looked at the 8 cities within the county and their reports. And across the board, we are all scoring extraordinarily high in the category of health. And I don't know if that surprises anybody in this room. I worked for 30 years in the healthcare field, and it was a surprise to me. But it tells you a couple of things. It is looking at scores of preventive health. How are we keeping people healthy? People who are healthy, how are we keeping them healthy? Access to health. So are we getting people in to see doctors when they need to be? And quality. Are people happy with the care that they're getting? And we score high in all of our communities, in part because compared to what is happening in the rest of the country, we are actually doing very well with healthcare access. Doesn't always feel that way to us. Doesn't always feel that way to me when I'm a patient. But there are places that are struggling with this far, far worse than we are. And we have some policies in place that give us some bonus points. California has a lot of policies about tobacco use prevention. And that improves our score. And it also has actually resulted in a lower rate of tobacco use in our area. So that improves our score. We're all concerned about obesity. Our obesity rates have gotten worse over the years. However, we are better than a lot of areas, and that actually contributes to our elevated score as well. Another thing that contributes to the score there is that we have pretty good access to parks and YMCA and places to get physical activity. So we do well in the health score. You can see, and actually this is kind of interesting. One of the lower scores for Guadalupe is engagement. I think that's really to be expected in a very small town. So when they're looking at engagement, they're looking at things like what kinds of social clubs are available, what kind of civic activities are available, what kinds of events are held on a regular basis. A small town is simply not going to have as much of that as a larger area. And to be perfectly honest, a small town on this scale, you're grouped in with other communities that are up to 25,000 people. So, you know, your population is small and you're not going to have maybe some of those resources that a larger community might. However, there's another area where Guadalupe does really well, and that's in neighborhood proximity and security and engagement with neighbors is ranked in that score of 58. And what I saw when I looked, deeper into the numbers, which you can in your handout that you have, is people report, this is a census question, believe it or not, a very high rate of interaction with their neighbors, talking with their neighbors, knowing their neighbors, supporting their neighbors when there's a problem with one or the other. That's probably a bonus of being a small community. It's your people really do know each other. Scores well in clean air and water, the environment score of 61, that's a high score. Housing, that's another one where I don't know if it always feels affordable and available here, but perhaps compared to some of the other areas in the state, you're doing pretty well. And you have some new housing as well. So that's kind of a brief summary of their livability data. If we go down the road of the age-friendly community, we can dig into this a little bit deeper because it really does give you some specifics about what's working and what's not working. They get down to the level of detail in housing, for example, of the percentage of homes that have a single step or no step entry, which of course is an age-friendly characteristic. But that's a pretty fine level of detail. So there's a lot of information in this report, my point there. No, that might be my last slide. Let's see. Good. Okay. So I really think because you're a small town, because people know each other here, and because people here probably have a good sense of what the community is doing well with and what the community would benefit from seeing a change. I think Guadalupe holds a promise as an age-friendly community, and I think we could do a lot that year if that is of interest. It's certainly not a requirement. There isn't any pressure to do it, but it holds some benefit. And I think it could be a real feather in your cap. You might potentially be the first city in the county to do it. And perhaps others will follow that lead. But I have gleaned that there's some enthusiasm here for that. And so I think that's something that we can work on together if that's of interest to you. And I hope that I've put a little bit of inspiration in that direction. And I also think that we probably have time for some questions. Is that right?
Yes,
So what can I tell you about this project? What would you like to know more about?
I just have a,
yes,
just a quick, I noticed in your different categories, you talked about comparison. Do you think that if our city wasn't, if we're a freestanding community, so we're not adjoining other cities, do you think that our index would go up? If we were in surrounding communities, even if our population was the same size as a rural community that's separated from other communities?
You know, it's a good question and I don't know the answer. I think there would maybe be a lot of factors. Depending on what kinds of communities you would abut, that could be an advantage or a disadvantage. Some of the things that give you a good score now are the fact that your community is small enough to be very walkable. You've got some affordability factors that maybe other parts of the county or the state don't have. I would encourage you, though, not to worry too much about the overall number. I mean, I think all of us, we see a score and we want to know, what can I do to make that score better? But it's more of just a reflection of what are the things that are happening here. And so as you dig deeper into the data and you see, well, where are we doing really well and how do we keep that going and maybe even make it better? And what are the things that we struggle with? And are they things that we couldn't address? Some things are really hard to address at the community level. And for example, in each of those categories, there are 61 different things that are ranked. 41 are different metrics that come from the census or other studies that happen around the country. And 20 of them are policies. And very often these policies are things that you get credit for it if the state of California has put it in place, like the tobacco policy. AARP also gives you credit for the fact that the state has become an age-friendly community. So you get that box checked, even though maybe it hasn't been done here at the city level yet. But yeah, some of those things, they're gonna happen maybe at a different level. But it does give you some ideas of where you could go. And our assessment is where this is sort of existing data. Our assessment is intended to really find out what local people have experienced and what they identify as their needs. And you might be interested to know that we've really been tasked to get that assessment out to people that maybe we don't always hear from. We'll be doing our assessment in both English and Spanish. There's an emphasis to get the assessment to people, groups of people that maybe don't often do that kind of thing, perhaps farm workers or disabled people or homebound elders. That's our job, to figure out how to get it out there so that we get information from a wide variety of groups that we don't always hear from when we do those kinds of studies.
question. I have a couple of questions, couple of comments and a couple of questions. I talked earlier to Margaret about Guadalupe Senior Center Advisory Committee, which through COVID, we had to basically stop. And we're regenerating that again. It's a 15-member group that has transportation, has health, has public safety, has recreation, outreach. It has a Spanish-English component and members that dig deep into the community in terms of who isn't served. And I've invited Margaret to attend that so that we can use that as a starting point to get back going on that. Just recently, Partners in Caring are on there too. They're asked to be on there. We're working with Chief Cash and other individuals. There's a lady that has a home that was red tagged, a senior. And we're sitting, we're emailing each other. What do we do? Where do we go and find help for her? This one particular lady doesn't want to leave her home. She was using a bus to live in. And where do you get the resources to, so those individuals out there that need, a place to go, an entity to find out where to receive services. The city works with area agency on aging to provide meals, which is a godsend for a lot of folks. Like 5 days a week, they're provided a free healthy meal, for seniors. And, how do we, I know that you mentioned we sent a letter to you in terms of wanting to, participate in this age-friendly network, or AARP network. What do we need to do to have you folks come in and work with us, with the community?
Well, I like your suggestion. I think, first place, kudos for bringing back your advisory group after the pandemic, because not every city. So that'll be a really great thing, and I think meeting with them is probably a wonderful step. I don't know, I'll leave it to you in terms of the protocols, whether this is something that group can make a decision on with your support, whether it needs to come back to city council for further discussion. But it sounds like meeting with that group as a next step is perfect.
Well, it's a city sponsored group.
Yeah.
So we have, Anise on there, we have, Chief Cash on there. Quite a few people that are connected to the city because it's a senior center, and in fact, as you were talking about exercise, right across the site of the senior center, we have Las Mujeres Park, and it was designed to actually have the seniors walk across and for exercise and things like that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if you need consensus from this side in terms of us moving forward with that. It's not on the agenda to approve, but I'd like a nod from the council if we should be moving forward with that.
Absolutely, that was a great presentation and all that information, and unfortunately, we have technology that's just, I mean, by the second, we're learning a lot, and I know that there's one thing that they can't do, they can't stop people from aging. And so we're all gonna be there very soon, so some sooner than others, but yeah, it's wholeheartedly, this is something that we should do as a city. And yeah, I mean, support 100%. Thank you for your presentation. Absolutely.
Just the last comment, for me anyway, is, we have a new community, the Pasadena community, that there are quite a few individuals that are of age to participate in all areas that you talked about: health, transportation, meals, exercise. And this is, to me, is a good way of bringing the whole community together. All the community members, from the little kids to the older individuals. So you see from our side, from the council side, that it's a nod to move forward with this. So if I need to, I'll talk with you in terms of what we need to do in writing the request for you to be here, because we want that placeholder for this process, because it's much needed. So.
Well, it sounds like it's the right time,
Yeah,
the right
perfect.
place, the right act, and that holds a lot of promise.
Thank you. Is there somebody in the audience that wants to say anything or comment, or all good?
I just want to thank you.
Okay.
As the director of the Adult Aging Network, this has been a joint project, and it's so exciting to see a community that's ready to embrace it. There's so much possibility, and the AARP index is, it's a study. They didn't come talk to people, and so we're so excited to come talk to people and find out, what's really important, and then create your plan around what's really important to the community.
One last comment. When we do food bank every first Thursday of the month, we have a vehicle drive up. And those people in the vehicles are the older individuals. And then we have a walk up. And the walk up is the people that are younger. They have the kids, but we have almost 250 people coming in, and most of them are cars, and most of them are elderly. And they come in for food. But there's other things that they may need that it'd be nice to find out what else do you need,
Exactly.
so. I appreciate your time and for you being here, so.
And I also thought that number for community civic engagement is way too low, because I have some familiarity with the community changers. And I
Yes,
know
yeah.
they're doing lots of great
Right.
stuff in the community. So
Well,
I don't know how they got that number, but I think it should be higher.
Well, they're on that committee too, the FSA and the community changers, so.
I'm actually very happy with our ranking, not too bad, and we can always be better, but that's not a bad place to start, so.
No, I think you can feel good about that rank, and, as
And
Bart says.
Guadalupe, it's the highest in the county.
Well,
Actually,
Oh,
I
Okay.
think.
But you're doing well in that regard, and, as Barbara mentioned, these are national databases that they pull this information from. We'll get much more interesting story when we do our local assessments, talk to people who are here.
Great. Thank you.
So we'll be in touch regarding the
Yes,
next meeting.
I will. I'll let you know. Yep,
And we'll keep you posted on how we can move forward.
okay,
And thank you
Thank
for the
you.
information.
appreciate it. All right,
Thank
Thank you. Okay. All right. The next item, item 7 is community participation. We have Mr. Michael Roberts.
leg off.
Put your leg back up.
Hi, Michael Roberts, and I'm a community member. I live in Pasadena. I've lived here for 4.5 years, and I love Guadalupe. I was involved with the recreation, economic, rural communities workshop. I was involved with the getting the beach back open to Guadalupe. And I love the people in Guadalupe, but there's one thing I don't like. That's the intersection, of Obispo and Main Street. I've had many near misses. My luck ran out last Wednesday. I was hit by a woman making a left turn that was looking down instead of looking at me. I'm assuming she was looking at her phone because she wasn't looking at me. So just like we got together and we did something about putting up the beach, we got together, we worked on the recreation economics for rural communities, hoping that the community can do something. The city can do something about that intersection. I've looked at the report from Caltrans. And the timetable is 3 to 4 years from now. I'm hoping that the city of Guadalupe can do something before then. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next individual, Nick Gonzalez.
Mayor Julian, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to go ahead and address also the fact that about 1.5 years ago, I went ahead and I was T-boned by a car also on the same intersection. So, in talking with Mayor Julian, he mentioned that in 2027, that at that time, they will be installing a signal light. But at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, why can't we install it a little bit sooner? Because it is getting to the point where we're having a lot more accidents now. And at the same time, we're kind of hoping that somehow or other, that maybe we won't have maybe a fatality there. So if you can, again, we like to address that. Now, my wife is also a community participant, although because she also goes ahead and she does line dancing. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with her, yeah, or anybody that's familiar with her, because he also goes ahead and she, not only does she perform here, but she also performs over in the House Lodge over in Oceano. But again, what's important to me is the fact that we would like to have that installed as soon as possible. Now, I realize that money doesn't come in until 2027. But maybe we can go ahead and get it done before that. Be fantastic. Thank you very much for your help.
Thank you, sir. You know,
Melanie? Well, I agree 1,000% with Mike and Nick about trying, I went to the, big Caltrans meeting and I know that it's all set for 2027, but maybe if the city and if all the people in, Guadalupe, talk to Caltrans and talk to people there about how many accidents are happening, maybe it'll happen sooner. Even hitting the light and with the light going on and off, you still have to look because cars still go through. So Mike's wife crossing the street when she was trying to take pictures of the accident, a truck went right past her and almost hit her, even with the light going like that. So it's dangerous. We're just really afraid someone's gonna die. And just on another subject, very quickly, I've just heard that the Royal Theater has a shortfall in getting finished, or it needs more money to finish the completion. And I heard that the city is thinking of putting up a bond to vote on. And I just urge city council to have a town meeting, or we citizens put together a town meeting, or the GBA puts together a town meeting where the town comes and perhaps ask council questions. Because I just don't think the citizens of the city are gonna wanna vote on another bond when they already voted on 2 other bonds and with interest rates so high. And I think there needs to be a plan B. We don't wanna lose this money. We want this to happen. And I just think the city really needs to think about a plan B, like a capital campaign. One of my, another person in Pasadena on the Facebook page put up, there may be a bond, this might be happening. And for the Royal Theater, because there's a $3 million shortfall. And I just looked at it, I didn't say anything, but everyone who answered said, no, they have $10 million. I don't want to pay any more money. So I just think the city needs to kind of get a feel for what people are feeling before we just go ahead and have a bond. Maybe we do a capital campaign. Thank you very much.
thank you. First of all, regarding the intersection of Obispo Street, and the lighting, and that's state property. The city's actually committed 4 million, 5 million,
4.5.
4.5 million to that project, which is the lighting. So is Pasadena. They've committed quite a bit of money, and so has Caltrans. We hear you all, because we all go through that intersection. And trying to, people from the railroad, once they get past that railroad, they're going 50 miles an hour through that intersection. We understand that. We can let Caltrans know what's brought up tonight, to see if there's anything we could do in the meanwhile, because it's quite a long time before anything is going to happen there. So, talk.
Mayor and council and public staff, I just got off the phone just 2 hours ago with Meg Henry, and she's aware of this, and she's gonna be analyzing it in terms of a short-term solution. I know with more markers in Beacon, and the design is 25% done. That can't be out to the public yet, but just saying they're working on it and she's aware of this and maybe I can get her in touch with individuals that are interested in knowing more about what they're doing.
And we have some printouts of what they're gonna do, and it shows the intersection, it shows the intersection, it doesn't show the timeline. We know the timeline is gonna be long, so, there's a map of that, and regarding the bond, we hired a couple of, professionals to look at what that bond may cost in terms of, each unit, each parcel, be it commercial, be it private. The city cannot push any of that. I know that, there's a committee that's being formed or has been formed outside of the city, because the city can't have any fingers in that bond process in terms of pushing it. What we will have is information about it, what individuals will have to pay with the parcel. They'll have that information, so it's not a foregone conclusion that it's gonna go forward, so it's a matter of us studying that. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, and I can offer any kind of factual information if anybody wants to come and visit me. My door is always open. So there might be things that you're not aware of that I might be able to help answer some questions.
And speaking of Plan A, B, C, we have regarding that theater, there's A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. So there's a lot of and I mentioned in the last meeting, there's a toolbox and there's a lot of tools in that toolbox. So we're not gonna just say, well, we'll wait on that. We know what people don't, we understand too that there may be high school district bond that's gonna go in. So we don't want the citizens to be hit with so many things that, they can't afford it. So we understand that. So again, Todd mentioned that you need specifics in terms of what's happening with that he's been willing to, to handle that. So I don't see any more requests to speak. We'll go to item 8, consent calendar. The following items are presented to the council as without discussion of a single agenda item. Is there a council member that wishes to pull an item for further discussion or the community? Is there a motion to approve the item 8 consent calendar? I motion to approve item 8 consent calendar. Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All ayes. I motion. Item 9, city administrator's report, information only.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. On April 16th, it's on a Wednesday. The Air Pollution Control District gave away 200 air filters for the, as part of the free pilot program for the free air purifiers. City Hall renovation update, I sent out an email, but the chief and I and some others had met with Jeff Van Eyck. And we're looking to put together the bid documents for probably a project sometime in early 2025. In talking with Larry, our illustrious planning director, we're gonna be talking to the grant writer about maybe possibly getting some grant for a study done in a 10-year plan for access to the beach and a multi-use trail feasibility study as part of our general plan update. And so we're just looking for funding to help that. And that's why it was pushed off for 10 years, because it's a long-term project. Slow Local Roots, probably in 60 days, they'll be opening their doors, in cannabis retail store. Other than that pretty much, I mentioned before, we got $105,000 for the Safe Routes to School grant. We're also looking at updating a HR policy manual and our March earnings. Jeannie always sends these over. It's always positive. The interest income for March was $45,132.70. That ends my report.
We have a new person on the table.
Oh, jeepers. Yes, I'd like to introduce you to Sylvia Estrada. She's our new HR manager. And would you like to say a few words? Not the end spot.
I'm very happy. Loving it. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Welcome, we're happy to have you, and we know that Nalini will be around to support you and as you take off. so. All right, Director of Public Safety Report, Chief Cash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council, staff and citizens. On the report, the only things that I have paperwork we want to talk about. The mayor brought up where was our funding from FEMA for the flood victims and what the city council gave. This thing. I was able to contact FEMA to do a follow-up. The thing that was nice about it is we had submitted everything on time and we had submitted all our proper paperwork. What they're thinking happened right now is I was directed to submit that to Cal OES, which is the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, and they were supposed to forward it to FEMA. The mix-up seemed to came is that when I put in the money for reimbursement for the sheltering, the city also put in to FEMA for reimbursement for everything else, so they thought that was all included. And it was two separate items, so they're tracking it right now. And you can see by the report, total reimbursement for $60,420. And it appears here that they're checking and that they did receive everything. But if they cannot locate it through Cal OES, which I was able to show them all the emails, all the paperwork that we had submitted, even Zoom time that we had done, that they will find the original request and amend it and set it up to their supervisors for further direction. So it looks very positive that they've located, it's not in the system, but all the paperwork that we sent was on time, and answered all the questions, and then I showed them all my emails. And so they feel very positive about that. So I'm just kind of waiting for that.
Very good.
The other thing that we put was you can see here traffic safety and code enforcement projects. Citizens had brought some of these issues forward. So you can see from the report here, a lot dealt with 11th Street and all the way out to Seamus. So there's some restriping going on, which I'd like to thank Todd and Public Works. They've already done some of the restriping on 11th. We had a blind curve at Galarte and 11th, and that is now have a red curb so that people can come up to that intersection and turn without hitting, without having a traffic accident because all the construction that's going on 11th. So that's pretty good. So we're really happy with that. Plus two, we're looking at two traffic safety enforcement projects, one at Olivera and Guadalupe in the crosswalk. We're out there, and even though when people hit the crosswalk light, cars still sometimes go through the intersection while people are walking. So our explorers will be assisting us in doing a operation there, and also at McKenzie. When the kids let out of school, we'll be doing more enforcement there to make sure we kind of slow down some of the traffic. You can see here some of the code enforcement projects that we're doing, and this has been pretty good because a lot of this comes from citizens and Facebook. 261 Tagnazini, which you guys went out there and cleaned up, and now there's weeds and everything else that's back out there. So we're working with our city attorney's office and fire department so we can locate all the owners and start working on that property. Also too is brought to our attention the corners right there at 10th and Guadalupe, both of those, the empty lot and the building. So we're doing research right now who owns both of those, and we'll be doing abatement projects on that. The far western, you can see here as far as and the parking lot, they have not cleaned. So we're starting to send notices out And it's nice, the citizens they're driving around and sending us messages. Here's another location, but we still got snowy plover. And then on Pioneer Street, we still have some issues that we're dealing down there. And we had a citizen call in about Surfbird Lane, 5060 Surfbird Lane. That has seemed like it's been an abandoned property. But we just now found out that the previous owner has passed away and no one has come by to kind of claim. So we're working with getting all the paperwork so that we can contact the family so we can have them step up. And you can see from the rest, that we have these are long-term projects, at least on the code enforcement, that we're working on so that, we're just making it public. We're not putting people's names, but these are the addresses that people are sending to us as far as projects, and we're gonna be hopefully learning from our city attorney how to do some of these long-term abatement projects to get people to comply. That is my report, unless there's any questions.
Questions? I do have a comment, Chief. And for Todd, we have a 30-mile-per-hour sign. It's on Guadalupe Street, ultimately in front of the smoke shop. And it's very hard to see because one of the trees is just kind of hiding the actual sign. So when you pass by, you don't really see it. So I think that even for reference, we have people that speed, but at least they can, take note that it is 30 miles an hour.
That's, we will work on that, but to address that bigger issue, Councilman Acosta also brought up about a tree issue, that we have at, by the cemetery on Main Street. And so I think it kind of goes back to what we've been dealing with for a while, Mr. Mayor, but who owns what with the trees? That's been an ongoing kind of issue. I don't know if that's ever really been resolved.
I think it was most recently, we trimmed those trees, all up on Guadalupe Street, probably 6 to 8 months back.
So we're taking possession.
Yeah, I think the trees are on the city side.
Yeah, that's on city road.
That's what I would want.
We,
The funny
still
thing
did it though.
is that speed limit sign is in the empty lot of the corner and it has no building with the weeds.
Right.
And it's planted actually in that lot.
In the lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Dan Ayers been.
just take a look at
Or
that.
down.
okay, I believe I remember the name of the owner of the lot. Well, yeah, we will take a look at that location. Yes, sir.
Along with all these that you got going on here, Chief, on the traffic safety project. Can we look at, how the Pasadena residents were having a concern with a bit about the crosswalk coming from Pasadena to by the empty lot where the storage at, and also another one to look at is gonna be when the kids are crossing the tracks going across Guadalupe Street to the cemetery. I've recently seen, now that I'm driving back to times, that we got a lot of cars who aren't very patient.
Yeah.
Kids aren't even, I already saw within the past 2 weeks 3 incidents where kids almost got hit because the cars were wanting to jump in. And I can't yell at my window what I wanna say to the driver because I'm driving a bus. So I'm just shaking my head and just biting my tongue.
I agree with that. We have to be, aware too, as far as staffing. We don't have the staffing to beat all those different locations, but we are looking at, because unfortunately, it's almost simultaneously, the kids are coming across the street from McKenzie. And then now in the parking lot, Main Street Market, where the kids, they hang out, but then, I think there's a location there that gives out checks to, some of the field workers. So we drove by and there's a lot of mixture with the kids and attitudes and everything else like that. And then some are walking down the street, at Guad and Main Street. So It's one of those things where you just kind of have to pick and choose to try to be as safe as possible. I've spoken with the school to ask for more traffic safety people who can volunteer. I've asked for parents to help volunteer. So far, we haven't got a whole lot of takers. So I'm gonna bring it up to our GSST, even though that's really not in their realm. But I'm just looking for volunteers to help us to be able to stage at different locations. Because it's only for a short period of time, but the kids are spread out. And then till we got the ones that are getting off the bus from high school. That are also coming in, so it's a big mixture. And we will look at, what we try to do is find the hot spots. First and foremost, so if you know of one in particular or two that we can stage, we will try to make that happen.
Chief and Gene, you probably know this too, our current, traffic, who does the crosswalk?
Is that McKenzie? Yeah.
Yeah, so.
He works very well with this.
But what I noticed is that in the morning, he actually stands on the south side of the street. And then he waits for 3 kids. Instead, he should be probably on the north side and waiting till they congregate about 15. So he's constantly doing these little stops where you can actually have a lot more cars. I don't know if he understands that, but I mean, in the morning, you should probably be on the opposite side, garnering about 20 kids and then making the cross, not just for 3 kids and you're on the opposite side. So it kind of doesn't make any sense. So I think that's where traffic's kind of getting backed up. And I know Gene knows too, like he's laughing there.
Well, we've asked to help train some of the traffic control people, but we found out, just like here at Mary Buren, it's an outside company. And they did not ask for our services to assist with any. So that's why I kind of got out there and helped myself. So sometimes in the morning, I'm stuck there instead of going to McKenzie, but I will speak with him, and hopefully he's very receptive to us. And so is the school, so I'll speak with them and see if we can work with them.
By doing that, makes it work efficiently and you have better flow of traffic.
Yeah, okay.
All right, any questions of Chief?
I just have a question. I've noticed the rise in graffiti, particularly saying like Santa Maria. Just curious if there's been any rise of conflict and.
No, not that, we have, not radio calls or issues that we've heard from any of the school resource officers, so I'm not aware of anything. That doesn't mean it's not happening, it just hasn't gotten back here yet.
It's usually by the Rigetti bus stop, so I would just about if there's any conflict and students.
Which one, which particular?
Behind Main Street Market.
Well, second up on here.
Oh, okay, okay, we'll take a look at that, thank you.
Any questions other than? All right, we'll go to the next item, item 11, public hearing. Approval of the revised draft cycle housing element for review by Housing and Community Development HCD and adoption of resolution number 2024-31. Mr. Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, good evening. The California Legislature identifies the attainment of an acceptable home and suitable living environment for every citizen as California's main goal for housing. As one municipality in California, we have successfully updated our general plan, and now we're working hard to have the state accept our updated housing element. You may recall a draft 6-cycle housing element was reviewed by your council on July 11th last year. It was transmitted along with the resolution to the Housing and Community Development, or HCD, for their review. Initial comments were received on October 19th, but staff rejected those comments because they were generic with no specific references to pages or sections within our draft document. HCD said they would revise the letter, and it was received on November 7th. Staff and the consultant have spent a lot of time going over HCD's comments and revising our draft. The consultant has done a tremendous job in responding to the demanding HCD comments. Attachment 3 in your packet contains a table prepared by the consultant that explains all the required changes. Other attachments include our last staff report from July, which is attachment 2, and the revised housing element with track changes as attachment 4, plus a new resolution to send back to HCD if you decide to move forward this evening, and that's attachment 1. So at this time, Dr. Nuarsu will summarize the revised draft utilizing a PowerPoint presentation, and we will both be available for questions throughout his presentation and from home.
Welcome, Doctor. Okay. So on today's agenda, we'll briefly outline, well, I'm going to skip the briefly outline where we are because Larry just gave you an update where we are with the project. But I'll spend the time explaining recent changes to state law on housing that we have to double check. That's pretty much what we did. And to make sure that we address them in the revisions to the housing element. After that, we will outline next steps in the process and open the floor for any kind of comments publicly. I guess all staff are now public today. So we are. Yeah. So what the government law requires us to do, I will skip that. And then I'll go to the 6th cycle of housing element. Right now, we've got 2 documents. We have the draft element, which we have just now revised. And we also have an environmental documentation on the draft element. And towards the end of my presentation, I'll give you a little perspective on the environmental documentation as well. So, key revisions to the housing element law. I want to just take a moment and give a quick background. The state of California, well, the HCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development, is being extremely strict this cycle, this 6th cycle, which is 2023 to 2031, an 8-year period. It's being extremely strict, and in their review and approval, I mean, we've done this, but I did the last one for the city, and I know how much effort it took. So why is HCD doing this? The state of California has a deficit of 2.5 million dwelling units. Okay, that's the situation at the statewide level. And when you look at the data historically, the deficit has been increasing every year over the last decade or more. So it's just getting worse. So somebody will have to put their foot down and say, we need to do something different. And that's what HCD is trying to do on behalf of the state. And apart from that, the shortfall, apart from being in at all income levels, whether you are talking about moderate or above moderate, it also, affects every income level, right? The shortfall, if you say, okay, everybody has money, we all win the lottery by chance, it's still not enough for the above income housing, and it's not enough for the lower income housing either. So that deficit is cut across. So the HCD wants to ensure, my assessment of the way they are being very strict on everybody, all cities, all local governments, is that they want to be sure that we commit to multiple changes in the housing law that have been passed
recently. And the changes relate to both the quantity of the housing that is produced and the variety in the types of housing that is produced. And so that is what I want to focus my presentation on today, right? Those changes that the state wants you to commit to. Either they want to show that in the document you have taken action on those changes, or you have committed in terms of policy in the document that you are going to do something. All right. Okay, so now let me start the formal presentation. The quantity of housing, with the quantity of housing, there are 11 key updates to address in statute to address housing production. So we'll take them one by one, and I'll try to be brief with each one. So the first is lot split and duplexes. SB 9, passed in 2021, allows a homeowner with a single family lot to divide the lot into 2 smaller lots. Each of the 2 small lots can accommodate 2 housing units or a duplex for a total of 4 units on that original lot meant for 1 house. That's the new law. So in our new housing element, we have program 1.9, which addresses the need to update the subdivision ordinance to reflect this requirement. Okay, so that's one. The next one is buffer. The change is not just what the county gave you as your RENA allocation. You have to add a 50% or more. Show that you have 50% or more extra space just in case. So it says that this is SB 156 of 2021. It requires a buffer of additional sites in case some of the sites listed in the housing element become unavailable before 2031. Now, for Guadalupe, based on the available sites and the densities that we have in the 2042 general plan, we could almost double the number of required units. So additional buffer will not be required, but we still show that we have the buffer. The next one, no net loss requirement. Again, SB 166, 2021. It has a requirement for no net loss, under which cities must demonstrate that they have adequate sites to meet the RENA unit at all times during the planning period. If projects on certain housing sites propose smaller numbers of lower income units than was presumed in the housing element, there has to be something done to make sure that there is no net loss. The easiest way I can explain this, let's say, if there was some reason Pasadena cannot continue to produce housing, then you have to find a way to make up that shortfall. Right? So at least we are saying the risk of net loss of site is extremely low in the city, given the abundance of available land, especially in Pasadena, and the city's historic need and trajectory of housing development. The next one is the Housing Crisis Act, HCA, Senate Bill 330, 2019. It prohibits local jurisdictions from enacting any new laws that will effectively, 1, reduce the legal limit on new housing within their borders. So, believe it or not, some places do that. We don't want any more growth. And so, no more housing, or let's reduce even how much we say we're going to build. none of that anymore. Or any law that would delay new housing via administrative or other regulatory barriers, that is all no longer allowed. That's prohibited by state law. So we have program 1.11 in the housing element, which is requiring the city to modify the zoning code to expressly address this, what they call streamlined requirement of XB 330 and its partner bill SB 35. So what is SB 35? The next one, SB 35, is the Affordable Housing Streamlined Approval Law 2017. It requires local entities to streamline the approval of certain housing projects by providing a ministerial approval process, removing the requirement for CEQA analysis, and removing the requirement for discretionary entitlement. So it allows qualifying development projects with certain minimum affordable housing guarantees and permanent supportive housing and navigation centers to move quickly through the local government review process and restricts the ability of local government to reject that proposal. I'm sure much of this will be music to the ears of developers. Okay, but the only catch there is you need to make sure there is a certain percentage of affordable included, and that's it. All right, so we have program 1.10 to address this requirement. So the program are the statement with their policies, in the document, the city will do this, will do that. So it's going to be quite a few changes to the zoning. Somebody is going to be quite busy. Okay. The next one is the carryover site law, AB 1397 for 2017. Any housing site from a previous housing element cycle that has not been developed is now referred to as a carryover site. These sites are to be approved by RAC, that is ministerial, if at least 20% of the units are affordable to lower income households. Okay, so basically, everything we identified that we identified before we used to satisfy the element. If it wasn't built, then they don't have to go through much of any hoop. But the only condition is they need a little bit of affordable housing, 20% affordable housing component to have that qualification. Okay, now Guadalupe doesn't have space to develop outside its boundary, right? So in this cycle, many of the lots, the individual infill lots are carried over. We are carrying over from the previous cycle. But as I'll show you in a moment, we are not counting those because we want to get around this requirement of the law, since we have plenty other lots available. So we are designating other lots to meet our RENA. Remember, the RENA requirement is only for the next 8 years. All right. So if any of those other ones, the carryover sites get built, that's just extra. All right. The next one, lot sizes for lower income housing. So the state now is asserting that if a lot is lower than half an acre or is larger than 10 acres, it's not good for affordable housing. I guess you can, if you are going to affordable housing, you want it to be multifamily, right? For the most part for it to, as far as the numbers to work out cost-wise. So if the land is too small, less than half an acre, you wouldn't have enough, to make it work. That's pretty much what they are trying to say. And if it's more than 10 acres, then it's basically, planning the development, fairly okay size development there, which the owner may not want to necessarily put to affordable housing production. So that makes sense. And but then historically, the city, when we look at all the apartments that we have, affordable housing, the low income housing that we have here, they are 40 to 80 units per location. Each one is on a lot size that is somewhere between the 0.5 and 10. So we don't have any problem with that. And there's no plan to do anything that is outside that scope. Okay. The next one is non-vacant site and substantial evidence requirement. Assembly Bill 1397. The city must make a finding in the housing element adopting resolution that the non-vacant site, in our case downtown site, will not impede additional residential development. Our general plan identifies certain locations downtown for mixed use, convert to mixed use for additional housing. Most of them are commercial land for now. Okay. So we have no issue with that because those sites are not, we are not counting them towards this cycle remand. Again, we have enough that we don't have to count the development of those towards this cycle, this sixth cycle. The next one, low income units throughout the community. AB 686. 2015 has been on the book for a long time, but it became effective from 2021. It's called the Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing, AFFH. The housing element must incorporate AFFH in the geographical distribution of sites for lower income housing to foster integration and create affordable housing opportunities throughout high resource areas. And Guadalupe has done a pretty good job with distributing, low income housing around. So there is not much historically problem with that in our case. The next one says reporting of sites by income category. So this is a little bit of a theoretical exercise here, but you have to go into what is the lot size, what's the location, and which ones could be for lower income, which ones could be for higher income groups. We have a little bit of judgment call there, but if you are in an infill area with a lot of the utilities and everything, it's just a matter of connection. Then if you take one lot and you put multiple units on it, then it becomes the more affordable type, right? And then you have a place, beautiful, wonderful, inviting place like Pasadena, which can serve the above moderate, housing type. And so we have that table. So in the document now, for every lot that we have identified as either contributing to or even if not contributing to, like the mixed house, the mixed use, lot, every single lot, we have to come up with whether it's good enough or low, very low, or moderate or high moderate. Some assessment of what it is suitable for. Okay. So those were the 11. Almost there. So we now have a set of laws to deal with the variety of housing types. Okay, a variety of housing types. There are 8 changes to the laws to deal with variety of housing types. So let's take those also one by one, and I'll try to make them brief. The first one is on sheltered, transitional, and supportive housing. SB2 as far back as 2007, requires local governments to identify one or more zoning districts that permit by right emergency shelters, transitional housing, and supportive housing in the zoning code. So HCD now insists you should amend your zoning code to allow by right all residential zoning districts. It used to be you determine which districts can accommodate shelters, transition, and support. Now, as long as it is a housing district, that you have to amend the zoning code to allow shelters, transitional, and supportive housing in all. Okay. The by right means the shelters will not require conditional use permit because the state believes those to pose constraints. So we have program 1.6, which requires the city to make this change to the municipal code. Okay. The next one is on emergency shelters. No, sorry, on planning emergency shelters. AB 2339, 2023. So we even finished our draft before this one went into effect. It requires modification of emergency shelter planning. Zones identified as appropriate for emergency shelters to also allow residential or other suitable uses for housing based on their physical attributes and their proximity to transit and other services. So program 1.6 again in the housing element requires the city to modify the zoning code to permit emergency shelters in zones where other residential uses are permitted. Okay. The next one, low barrier navigation centers. This one tickled Larry when he saw it. Low barrier. He said, what is that all about? You right, AB 101. What is a low barrier navigation center? So it demands that zoning regulations should define. Now your zoning code has to use that term, low barrier navigation center, in the municipal code, right? It has to say it's permitted in districts that permit housing in order to comply with the law. You have to say they are allowed by right, and the law prohibits conditional use permit or other discretionary approval for low barrier navigation centers. So what is the difference between a low barrier navigation center and a shelter, right? Shelter is more like a temporary need place. A low barrier navigation center is a place where a whole family can move in permanently with very little restriction or hoops to jump through. So in both cases, you can get there easily, but one is more temporary, the other is more kind of permanent, but not forever permanent. Okay, so that's the low barrier navigation center. So with that program 1.6, addressing that, changing the zoning code to allow the emergency shelters, which include low barrier navigation centers in all zones that permit housing without requirement for design review permits and discretionary action. The next one, residential care facilities and group homes. So permanent supportive housing, as far as they relate to residential care facilities and group homes, there was a bill in 2016 which led to a proposition 2 passed in 2018. It requires local government to treat licensed group homes and residential care facilities as long as they have 6 or fewer residents, the same as single family unit. Okay, as long as they have 6 or fewer people, just like any other house with however many number of people. The local government must allow licensed residential care facilities in any area zoned for residential use and may not require licensed residential care facilities of 6 or fewer persons to obtain conditional use permit or variances that are not required of other family dwellings. So right now, the city permits supporting housing in all residential zones by right, as well as in the C2 commercial zone. So the housing element now adds program 4.5 to allow supportive housing in all other zones that permit housing without requirement for design review permit and discretionary action. The next one, farm worker and employee. Oh, how did I get it?
There you go.
So I guess when I press it, it jumped to slide. Okay, so the next one is the farm worker and employee housing. We've always had farm worker address those in housing element, but now it requires that local jurisdictions treat employee housing for 6 persons or fewer the same as other housing types permitted in each zoning district. So as long as the unit has 6 or fewer people, it's just any other family living like any other place. All right, that's really what they are. So we have program 4.6, which is to facilitate the development of multifamily housing in the city to serve employees working in both the agricultural and other sectors. Okay. The next one, accommodations for persons with disabilities. Reasonable housing accommodation is another of that AFFH, affirmatively favoring fair housing requirement. It requires local government to make reasonable accommodations in the form of modifications or exceptions in zoning laws and other land use regulations when such accommodations may be necessary to afford disabled persons an equal opportunity to use and enjoy a dwelling. So in addition to providing, as far as Guadalupe is concerned, in addition to providing disabled access in new construction projects, the city also provides funding for retrofitting existing rental and owner-occupied housing for ADA access under the city's occupied housing rehabilitation program. So you've been doing much of this already. And so that we explained that in the housing document. The next one is single room occupancy unit, SRO. SRO is a cluster of 7 flat living units of weekly or longer tenancy, providing sleeping or living facilities, in which sanitary facilities may be provided within the individual unit and cooking facilities may be shared. Places like San Francisco Bay Area, you know, these days you might even Los Angeles just buy a whole older hotel and convert them into SROs. You know, it's a way to get at least, you know, you have your own, a place with a bed and a little toilet on the side, and you may have a place to cook inside. If you don't, there will be a general cooking area somewhere that you can go to. I mean, it beats being homeless on the street for sure. All right, and those, they go far because they are like the most affordable type for most people. So when you prepare something like that, they go very fast. So the housing element includes programs to facilitate the development of single room occupancy units, policy 1.12 and program 4.1. Just now you need to include that. You allow those types of that variety of housing in the city. Your municipal code needs to show that. And I believe this will be the final one for the laws mobile and manufactured homes. The location and permit process for manufactured house should be regulated in the same manner as a conventional or stick-built structure. They want to treat them just like any other house, basically. So in Guadalupe, mobile and manufactured homes are conditionally permitted uses in all residential zones as well as mobile park zones where that is where they're supposed to be. The question is, we have to deliberate on what changes to make to the laws to make them more acceptable, widely. Okay, so that is it. As far as the changes in the laws, I only have a couple more slides to go. So,
Excuse me, Doug.
yeah, okay,
I think, we're gonna take a biological break
okay,
so that we can think.
yeah, all right.
Thank you, and sorry to interrupt.
Welcome.
You just never.
Resume?
You'd be all over.
Okay. Okay, sorry, Doc.
Oh, thank you.
Did you lose your place?
Yes. So, so basically that is the review of all the laws. Some of them old, many of them quite new that we have to make sure we purposely address. Not, not, you can just even mention them, but that's not enough. Still have to relate it to the number. So the next slide just say a little bit about the numbers. So the first one is now, I think it went off. Okay.
She can click.
I can click from here. Oh, is it on pause?
Oh,
Is
there you
Okay.
that too far?
No, that's it. That's where it should be. And so the question then is, the fundamental question, while we go to the regional housing need allocation process, countywide, and all of that is for every jurisdiction to produce a certain quantity of housing by income group. And so the question, after going through all this, trying to make sure we satisfy all the laws, is Guadalupe poised to meet its regional housing need allocation? And this table shows, first the answer is a resounding yes. This table shows the second column there is, right, yeah, okay, the second column there is the allocation by how many housing units. You are basically supposed to produce, quite a large 327 above moderate, because I believe they see what's happening in Pasadena, and they say we need more of that for the county. And then, give you, so we have that, and this is what, ooh,
Wow. All right.
what happened?
What happened? You
Boy. So the column there, that's why we show that we can meet. So we move over and then I divide into percentages. So the vacant infill lots, we got infill lots in the central area of the city that can accommodate lower income units because of the virtue of the allocation and everything, much less cost to connect them with utilities and everything and all of that. So they can do that, and we've got that is enough to get 57 units across the income group, but mainly meeting the lower income category. Then vacant space in DJ farm, predominantly the moderate and the above moderate category can also produce, about 450 or so. Then if we subtotal that, we are meeting now, looking horizontally, the extremely low, you'll be able to do 200%. So you've got your 100% plus a buffer. Very low, 100% plus 50% buffer. The low will be 100% plus 46% buffer. The moderate will be 100% 17% buffer. And the above moderate will be 100% plus 20% buffer. Okay, so at least now we are showing them this is all the kinds of things they want us to show. And we have like a big inventory, database that we have to submit separately from the document. Now all that is completed and with the preparation of this table. Next, Then the next question is, what about beyond the 6th cycle? So this is our interest. The what is it going to end in 2031, right? And so we look at the two light colors at the top, the infill sites and the DJ farm, we know are going to satisfy the 6th cycle. But we also have the carryover site from last cycle, which were not built. We have the mixed use downtown, and we have other mixed use which are outside of that. So together, we still have room, and we have room to accommodate 2.5 times what the 6th cycle RENA says Guadalupe should produce. Okay, so space is not a problem here. But note also that there is additional potential for accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units. That's not even included here. So that's over the top of that. But I don't, if you try to estimate, actually you ask, so how you come up with it? So we are leaving that alone. All right. And so that is where we are as far as the numbers. So with that, I'm done with the presentation on the housing elements document. I want to give a quick perspective on the environmental documentation. So the next slide. Oh, I don't know if mine is still working. So the Office of Planning and Research says that if you have an environmental documentation for, say, general plan, bigger study, of which the housing element is a part, you can tear off that environmental documentation just to see whether that particular element, like in this case, the housing element, is going to have any environmental impacts that are outside of what was looked at under the general plan. And so that's what we did. And so we did the tiering. Next slide. It's my still working now. Next slide. So we went through the tiering process. We looked at, it's still 21 different target areas you have to look at. We look at all of them closely, analyze them, and we came up with the conclusion. So that's all documented in the initial study and negative declaration, ISND. And what is the determination? Next slide. Based on the evaluation in the initial study and the final program initial study and negative declaration. You say?
The mitigated ND.
The mitigated negative declaration for so let me just say this way. Based on the study for the housing element, the environmental study, and the previous study for the general plan, all right? Based on that, we find that the proposed project will not have a significant effect on the environment, and a negative declaration is hereby recommended. So, that is the mouthful way of it. You state the whole thing, okay? So a negative declaration means that the project, which we are calling the new housing element, is consistent with the general plan and also the zoning for Guadalupe. In other words, we are declaring that it's not going to have a negative environmental impact on the city and its environment. So that's the determination. Next steps, we look forward to adding your feedback, the next slide, your feedback to the document and to update the council resolution as Larry mentioned on the housing element. Then we will submit the revisions to HCD for approval and certification. That's all we are waiting for is everybody to say congratulations. I'm happy to tell you this is so certified. And then we breathe for 8 years. The remainder of the 8 years. Okay. And when after that is happens, once we got that, we get the approval, we will circulate the initial study, but that's also another document. But that's not going for any approval anywhere. And then the city council will pass a final, make a final approval of the document. And then the multiple changes to the municipal code will begin. Okay, so that's, I think that's about it. So, thank you all very much. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, we're gonna open it up to the public. Anybody like that?
Scared them away.
7, it's open public hearing. Seeing no one in the public, at 8:08, we'll close public hearing. And comments from the, I don't know how you managed to, anybody manages to do this.
And he's been doing it for years, cycles and cycles, and they're just throwing more stuff each time, so it's crazy.
I actually wanted to mention that I am so impressed with full presentation, how enthusiastic you were about it. Like,
Yeah.
I love that you love what you do so much because it's like way over my head, but that was just really inspiring.
Thank you very much. Those are the antiques of an old teacher.
Any comments, Todd? Todd?
I'm just wondering, once this gets approved, and it better, through HCD, hopefully they approve it. And it goes through the whole cycle. Could it be in 3 years from now, we have to amend it, if there's something that comes up that's earth shattering from the state level?
Oh, no. Until the next cycle.
Okay,
The next one will
8 years.
start 2031 to
I'll be gone.
39.
what is it when they say that you have to go on a 4-year cycle? Is it when you miss something?
Yes.
Okay.
So when you don't get a certification in time, you get a letter saying, oh, because of that, you need to go on, do a mid cycle.
Yeah.
Just to keep you on track. Yeah. But if that happens, we just give them the same report. Don't worry about it. We have.
Don't jinx it, Todd.
Come on, Todd.
Don't jinx it.
Well, we'll do a lot of updating as far as we'll update all the demographic data and all that stuff. But the available space to satisfy the arena, if you do the same numbers you are trying to satisfy, that's what I mean by
More questions.
give them back.
There'll be a lot of steak dinner there, Todd.
Okay. My other question is this is one of the elements of a total of how many in the general plan?
I think we've got 9 elements.
Okay.
Plus the other special stuff.
Yeah.
This is really good data for anybody to have. I had one correction.
Okay.
All these pages?
Well, okay.
No, it's just back, and I don't know, it says page 5 on my, I have to show somebody because I don't, you have all kinds of numbers in here. It mentions with item D, it says subsequently on July 11th, 2024, a hearing took place in the city council meeting. The draft was approved. So,
Yeah, that should be 23.
yeah,
Really,
yeah.
But you're saying
I don't wanna get kicked back and say you guys.
Is the track change a copy?
Yes. And it, I have it.
I see it, I see it.
Oh, do you?
Yep.
How'd you find out?
Yeah, okay.
Because I've got. I'm just fine.
Larry, if you see that far into the future.
I got a dumb question.
We'll take that.
Any other comments? from
No
the Senate
question.
or,
Okay. I got one more.
Council?
Just one more and I promise that's it. I noticed that you talked about manufactured housing, but you also called it mobile. From my training in the past, it sounded like mobile, it was a stigma, there's a stigma to that term. Is that still the case today?
But the HCD refers to them as one category.
Yeah.
And one of them comes on wheels, The other one does not come on here.
Right.
Right, that's
Okay.
the difference.
Okay.
But they treat them as one group.
Okay. Go ahead.
No,
Yeah.
it's working? Hi. Well, now Todd asked for clarification on one thing or had a question. We were talking about the one form of housing that wasn't the shelter, but it was the one that we made a comment on. Low barrier, threat.
Low Area Navigation Center,
That's it.
okay.
Is that like a shelter for, let's say, like women, like could be like something like that, like an abused woman shelter? I just wanna make sure that.
Yeah, so my understanding is it's more like something that a family that is in dire need.
Okay.
Will go to immediately while you try to figure out, how to help them.
Got it, okay, thank you for that.
Without necessarily putting them with a big, shelter place with everybody else who is homeless and all that. So women, especially women with children, we qualify for that. First, yeah.
Any other comments, questions? Is there a motion to adopt resolution 2024-31, directing staff to make any revisions based on input from the council and transmit the revised draft 6 cycle housing element to HCD for required 90-day review?
I make a motion to adopt resolution number 2024-31.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call please.
Councilmember Costa Junior. Councilmember Robles. Councilmember Hernandez.
Aye.
Councilmember Burnett.
Aye.
Mayor Julian.
Appreciate all this hard work that went into this.
And thank you for reading this stuff and staying awake through the presentation. We do appreciate it.
We encourage all staff to read these things.
Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right,
I'm disappointed.
we'll wait for the audience. Okay, regular business, fee waiver policy for the use of city-owned facilities by nonprofit organization. Mr. Penco.
Thank you, Mr. Oh, I turned it off. It was on. Was it dead? It died. You're like, "Oops." No, I don't think that. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. There's a lot of detail in the staff report that I'm not going to go over because I wanted it in there just to document the kind of the history of this issue. But it's pretty clear that since September 11th, 2018, the city council has consistently made statements that the city's facilities and park need to recover a reasonable fee for their use. A little bit for my time, but when I heard there was a time where nonprofits routinely received fee waivers prior to that time period. And as the mayor pointed out in a recent, last year when the Kids Come First Foundation, oh yeah, well, good night. Good night. Good night. You guys don't want to hear this? Reach back to your thing. Yes. I don't blame them. During the May 2023, actually the May 9th, 2023 council meeting, the Kids Come First Foundation requested a fee waiver. And that was heard by the council. And during that, in connection with that staff report, it was noted that the mayor was under the belief that the city administrator had discretion to waive the fee, and that turned out to be the case. As I later looked at the code and saw there's a section in there, section 2.28.040, that it's a little bit kind of vague, but it includes it. It says that the city administrator may grant or refuse a permit in its discretion
if no admission price is proposed to be charged, and may grant the permit upon any condition he feels necessary, and that would include a fee waiver. So I think that was the basis of the previous practice prior to 2018. But anyway, the bottom line is the council has spoken on this issue. That I don't think it's safe I don't think it's consistent with the council's direction for the city administrator to be making decisions about waiving fees in light of the repeated council action on the importance of making sure that the city facilities, the fee is charged for them. However, the recent Touch of Style Car Club request at the public community forum about a fee waiver just reminded staff that this issue really needs to be addressed. And it was an opportunity to present a policy for the council's consideration concerning fee waivers in general. The proposed policies attached to the staff report, and tonight we're not asking for any action. We're not asking for there's no resolution approving the policy as written. We're mostly here to hear what you think. Are we as staff on the right track with this? If not, then what other direction should we move on? If there's any tweaks that you think should be made to this, or expansions or shrinking of the criteria, that would be welcome information too. One alternative that I didn't mention, since we're not asking for action, is that the council clearly has the authority just to allow like a fee waiver across the board for all organizations without having to deal with individual requests for waivers like the policy is proposing. Maybe I should have discussed what the policy is proposing. What the policy is proposing is that when somebody wants to request a full or partial reduction in fees that are charged, no, any individuals, doesn't have to be a nonprofit. The policy states that actually I don't have it in front of me, but it's for a nonprofit or an unincorporated group of residents that are excuse me, the nonprofit is either based in the city or provides services to the city. So like forgot the name, forgive me, the area agency, agency on aging, they're providing services to the residents of Guadalupe that would be eligible under the policy. There are some organizations or some community residents that are not really organized as a nonprofit, and the Community Changers come to mind as one such organization that. But they're nonprofit. Oh, they are. Okay, I didn't realize that. I'm mistaken. But there may be an organization like that that isn't, or maybe a group of individuals that do things that. So the policy is flexible in that regard. Clearly, the idea is that it wouldn't be for individuals to request a waiver for private benefit. It has to be some sort of some community, some organization or some group of individuals that's doing good in the community, so to speak. If the organization were to request, there's some criteria that the council, it would come to the Rec and Parks Department for initial review. They would fill out an application form. The fees would be calculated. The request would have to be written in writing, either a letter or an email to the Rec and Parks Department, and then that would be provided to the city council for a decision. And the policy recommends some criteria for the council to consider and whether to grant it or not. For example, one of the criteria is kind of limited to like a youth sports kind of thing, or something similar, where if the organization is granted, it does not deny participants or players the right to participate due to inability to pay. That would be a criteria to take into account. It'd be seen kind of hypocritical, I think, for organizations to deny providing free services to people who can't afford it if they're asking for a waiver because they can't afford it. Another criteria would be if the imposition of the fees would create a financial hardship on the organization or would have a detrimental effect on the services provided to the public. Also, whether the fee waiver would or would not have significant impacts on the facility or Rec and Parks Department activities, that the applicant will provide volunteer services and materials to whether they would to mitigate any impacts created by the event or program. or that impacts are adequately offset by certain public benefits provided by the program. One note, staff recommends that if the applicant offers to provide volunteer services to offset any impacts, that the volunteer services would be subject to the approval of the Rec and Parks Department, which may require the use of a city building attendant, for example, even regardless of the volunteer. For example, when alcohol is served, or if they're not satisfied that the volunteers would do an adequate job. In other words, there has to be some kind of, we can't just have a couple people say, oh yeah, we'll clean up and then, monitor it, and then they don't. I think we've been down that road before. Scheduling, of course, would be subject to availability. And the like. The criteria is all listed in the policy. Then we're also asking, and this was because this was taken from a city that had a policy, the city of Latrobe, which I've never been to, and I'm not even sure I could point to it on a map, but I did like the policy. It requires that within 30 days after the event or program, where the organization or the group of individuals that otherwise qualify receive the fee waiver, they would need to provide a report to the Rec and Parks Department, number of participants, revenue and expenses, and if any benefit any benefit to the city. And that Rec and Park staff would use this information to provide written update to the city council reporting on the event. I assume it could be done quarterly, it wouldn't have to be done after each event. Would include pros and cons of the event for future reference and for any necessary improvements or facility use. And then lastly, any failure to abide the rules and procedures as set forth in the policy would result in any permittee who failed to abide by them from being refused or being denied future waiver requests. One other thing that I gotta find, staff also recommends that regardless of any fee waiver, that it not be a complete waiver of all fees. They said the city shouldn't have to pay it all, or like certain basic costs, the utility costs, supplies are used, if a building attendant is required to be provided, staffing costs, other fees would be subject to waiver to the council discretion. And of course, this is just an opening proposal. The council is free to provide further direction. And be very interested to hear what you have to say, and I'm able to answer any questions. But with on the right side, and the east side, Gene?
I'm listening. I believe we should have at least a minimum of a fee. I don't think we should waiver all the fee at all. I mean, there are some stuff being used in accordance with some of the facilities. It's like someone rents here and it's a nonprofit. I feel we can come up with some kind of like, okay, you can ask for the minimum fee request to be looked at, in the sense of what is it that you're doing, what kind of event is it? In that case, because it does cost money to keep, pay the lights, toilet paper, water, stuff like that. That would be my take, is looking into with what we approved for the master fee schedule for the rental, and then looking like, okay, how can we, well, this is the minimum fee that you may have to pay, from the council. So I description of what would be, that's what I think. I don't think we should waiver the whole process, because you never know, we might need building attendant, might need stuff like that.
I'll comment on your comment. I don't believe we should waive fee. The attendant, if there's a security that's needed, if there's anything that we have to pay out of our pocket, out of the city's pocket to provide, that shouldn't be waived. That's my opinion. And it's almost like a slippery slope if we start looking at giving. I know there's a note from Ms. Boyston regarding, and Anita will read it in a minute, regarding what you're talking about, that there needs to be how do you define, how much power is being used? We talked about, and the fees mentions that there's all nonprofits receive a 40% discount of what it would normally cost. So what would happen if we just basically, using a waiver out there if it's the last resort? But with a nonprofit saying there's a minute, you've got a 40 or 50% discount on the use. So that says to everybody, you're gonna have to come up, the nonprofit's gonna come up with whatever we come up with. Now we have, like I said, a 40% discount that they receive for nonprofits. So, but to waive, nothing that comes out of the city's pocket, financially to be waived. I know the utilities may be different things. That's where we look at, not waiving all the fees, that it'll cover some of our expense. The other thing is, maybe I'll let you all talk first. I don't wanna go. Gilbert, do you have Christina? Go ahead.
I think what would be a so unique, events are unique here, case by case. What comes to mind maybe is like, what would be Kids Come First art show case. I think last time they mentioned was, they got invoiced, but might have been too difficult, so they asked for a fee waiver. So something like that, where the kids are showing their art for free from Mary Darren versus maybe Viva Marte UCSB, where they can't, pay fully, but they are open to paying halfway of cost. So I think that fee is very important.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have to agree with that. If we have an attendant and we're incurring something, that there should be a small fee there to recoup some of the, you know, as far as the paper towel, water, for sure, light, electricity. I mean, we have lots of organizations in town, and there's probably some that do more than others. And as far as giving back in the community, and not each one, not each organization has the mold. So you were explaining something about that, Philip, and I think I read that you wanted a kind of letter form actually submitted in the application.
Well, it would be in addition to the application. You fill out an application like anyone else that wanted to use the facility, provide all the information. Staff would determine what fees are appropriate. And you're right, Mr. Mayor, I forgot to mention that we do have discounted fees already that were approved the last time. I think it's in the staff report.
And even having the actual nonprofit 501(c) on that application.
Well, we would want them to ask the letter, or write an email would be fine, asking for the waiver and the reasons why. One of the things that I forgot to mention also is that there would be a request for, at least the policy states, and it may be not appropriate for the city of Guadalupe, but the policy states that, would request a copy of a financial statement or a bank account to see, you know, what your money is. And if you got a lot of money in the bank and they're asking a fee waiver, then that would be something we would want to take into account with whether to, you know, to determine that. We don't necessarily have to require that, financial. It may be a little bit intrusive for some of the council members, but the point of including it is at least a opening discussion point, is that we want to make sure there is a financial need and not just somebody who wants to get a discount. Yeah, right. That's what the purpose of the letter would be, or the email.
One comment, you're gonna talk, so we're, I don't think you wanna say a few things. Whitney?
I have one thing to say. Can you hear me? I like the idea, no? Oh, there we go. I like the idea of them having to submit a report after the event if they have received a waiver. I feel like we get some data from that, we get some, you know, insight that maybe in lieu of the money, it's still valuable. So I like a report at the end of the event. I think that transparency is a lot, so just knowing what's coming in and out of our venue.
And Denise may mention this, I don't, because the Recreation Commission only meets once a month. And if there's a canceled meeting, or then there may be 2 months, and then that might hinder an organization from getting a note in terms of if they do want a waiver. But I would think that that should be bypassed to where it comes to the council on a consent, or whatever, so we don't have to spend the whole evening trying to figure this out. But Anissa, just wanted to know from you, how do you feel about it going through the Recreation Commission and then going to us to get an approval?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have it just come straight to city council, not to bypass the opinion of the recreation department, but what I find in my department is that when people come in, they are only coming in with maybe a 2 weeks heads up on their events. They're, people aren't thinking way ahead.
Yeah.
And maybe we get a month. And if it doesn't fall on the right day, there's no way we could get it to the Recreation Commission. So then we would have to deny them, which
Yeah.
defeats the purpose of all this. So since the city council meets twice a month, I think that's the safe route and the appropriate route.
Can we put a 60-day minimum in the request?
You could try. But in
45 days.
in my experience, not only here in just the last month and a half, but in event planning in general, that's probably just not gonna work. Logistically, people they just don't plan that far ahead. Now, if you want to do that, of course we can, and then those people that don't think far enough ahead will just not be eligible. But I think again, it kind of makes this pointless, to have the fee waiver and everything, unless you find a way that you can educate the public and educate these organizations and tell them like, hey, if you don't come 45 days beforehand, you won't have this ability. So it just depends on what you want for the city of Guadalupe.
I agree.
One of the things too, and I haven't know here said, what are we waiving?
Yeah, so we are not waiving security. We are not waiving ABC licenses. All those things are completely legal. The documents, they have to be done. If you have alcohol, there's no choice in that. If I would suggest to the council, I would say don't waive the building attendant. It's a cost we have to pay. I would have the deposit on hand regardless of if you're gonna waive the fees for a safety net, if there's any damage or if anything happens to the property. Or anything that they're using, tables, chairs, etc. I would make sure that they pay the deposit, and then of course, just like anybody else, as long as the place is clean and there's no damage, they'll get their deposit back. Within that, I think about 2 weeks is what finance does, or 2 weeks. If you're on the right cycle, I think like 3 weeks max, something like that, depending on when you get it in. So really, when it comes down to it, what you're waiving would be the hourly fee.
Right.
So if we boil it all down, that's what you'd be waiving, is the hourly fee. Just to give you an example, if you came to me today and said, hey, I wanna use the auditorium for an hour, that's $90. So that's what we would waive. We would waive the $90. You would still pay your deposit. There's a lock-in fee. We do that so that people don't just say, hey, can I have the next 3 Wednesdays? Then it doesn't allow me to book drop-in or book the wrestling or book someone else. And then all of a sudden they just don't show up. So you have that lock-in fee, you get the lock-in fee back as long as you show up. There's a deposit, you get the deposit back as long as the facility is clean and not damaged. So they would get all those things back just like everyone else in the public would if they came to us. But it would just be the hourly fee is the only part that I see that you can waive that wouldn't take away from the money that the city is spending to hold that event for that organization.
And this goes to what Eugene has mentioned in terms of they've got to pay something. So we know we're gonna out of pocket, we're the attendant. Everything else that's required. But it's almost like if we charge them something, that the paper goods, the water, the cleaning, that has to do that. And I don't want volunteers to clean. Because a lot of people say, well, volunteers will clean up, and then they don't.
Yeah.
It's all a matter of,
Well, and then our maintenance has to be paid to clean up the next.
right. So that then leaves to me, over back to, is it, there should be a minimum, could there be a minimum, even for nonprofit? That is charged?
So I think if you looked at the fees, you would charge them the other fees, just
So-
not the hourly. So,
Yeah, I'm talking about the hourly now, so
oh, getting down to the hourly
Yeah.
and charging part of the hourly.
part of the hourly, which picks up the, the consumable supplies and.
Right.
and, things like that.
I mean, going back to the earlier comment, we do already have fees set in place for nonprofits.
Right.
And I feel like
40%, yeah.
it circles back, what you're saying kind of circles back to those numbers. Because for every single venue, we have nonprofit fees and they are getting a discount. And so that's kind of,
Well, maybe there should be a threshold, the minimum that we charge, a flat rate, for the nonprofits,
in that case, would you take the nonprofit fees that we have set in place away and do this instead?
No, well, I'm thinking outside the box now, so minimally, if we're saying 40%, like you mentioned, what's 40% of 90, that they're $36?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
They're paying 50.
They'd be paying $54 as opposed to 90. Perhaps we can just jack up that percentage of discount to a larger amount, so we can cover the consumable supplies and stuff like that, and the maintenance side of the.
Okay.
Just thinking, I mean, that's
Yeah.
my.
And the distinction is local nonprofits, right? Anybody
Yeah.
from Santa, other areas coming in would pay the full.
Maybe like a half rate, day, full day rate.
Yeah, if I may, I was gonna say that it would be one thing to waive, have like you mentioned, like a flat rate or minimum rate for 1 hour, that's not so bad, but if it's all day event, it's a really low rate, and that's a great, huge discount, and there are costs to the city just from running the lights and everything, for the longer period of time. I did want to ask something else about the word, about nonprofits. I wanted to go over the list of things in the policy again to make sure that you're okay with that. The 3 categories, and it wasn't very clear because I wasn't looking at it when I read the staff report, and I gave the staff report. The proposed groups that would be able to qualify for the fee waiver, whatever you decide it would be essentially other government agencies, if you think that's appropriate, okay. I think so, and then nonprofits, of course, but those located in Guadalupe or who serve Guadalupe. So, I mean, that would be a determination you'd have to make if there was a waiver. I mean, if an organization that's based in San Diego says, well, we have a couple of people that received our services, but they're, that may not cut it. Sorry, no offense. I was thinking of someplace far away, that's why.
With a letter defining what they
Yeah.
do and what they do.
And then the other category was kind of the one I wanted to give some leeway to you, the Guadalupe organizations with financial hardship directly benefiting the Guadalupe community, such as a community group without nonprofit status. Now, I don't even know if there are any, and maybe you don't want to have that because it is kind of vague and it does require financial hardship. So I just want you, when you provide any direction, I want you to address the 3 groups that I identified, if that's adequate.
Where do churches fit in?
Well, they would probably be nonprofit organizations. They would probably
Not
qualify.
501c3, they're different.
No, yeah, I didn't limit it to 501c3s.
Right.
I mentioned, including 501c3s or 501c4s, but any nonprofit would probably be okay. Unless it was a Rotary Club, of course,
Yeah, right. Any members of the Rotary Club?
Yeah. They would never ask for a discount.
I have a question.
Okay.
Are we? Is there something wrong with the policy? I mean, or is there not a policy written? Is that all that you're doing?
Well,
Making an actual
Yeah.
policy?
I don't know if you were here at that meeting, but someone came from the Touch of Class. Touch of Style.
I think she was there.
Oh, you were?
What? How was it?
I don't, I know, I don't think so. I think it was the meeting before she.
Yeah, that's right.
They came to a public comment period
Weren't they
and
here last last month?
It was, I don't remember.
The-
I actually have it. Oh, I said, that was one of the interview questions. Yeah, but that, they came to public, you know, and it's
Right.
because Hannah, former director of Rec and Parks, basically didn't know what to do. They said, well, you need to go to the council. I can't waive it. I don't want to waive it.
Yeah.
Go to the council. So they came to the public comment period, and this is something that's happened a few times, so we wanted to use this as an opportunity to come up with a policy. So the short answer to your question is yes, we don't have a policy. We think we need one, and that's what this is about. We're just trying to get some direction, move towards something that the council can live with.
No, go ahead, Todd.
Sometimes like, I think there's a blur in the line of, say, a nonprofit that might have another kind of an affiliation. And there might be a distinction where they might make money on something and I sometimes wonder if that should be defined somehow. I'm not sure how to really explain that, but they might have some kind of, I don't know, venue. What, you mean if it's a fundraiser? They're raising funds,
Well,
you know, would that be appropriate to, waive the fees in that case?
well, there's, it's like, Metro Style, they do, toys.
Okay.
So
Like
they're-
20-something years of doing that.
And just like, the Kids Come First, they had a dance, I think they had a dance, there was a dance here. And, it was a fundraiser for Kids Come First, so.
Okay, yeah.
So one thing as a recreation department manager that I would ask you to consider as you think about this is the nonprofit coming to us to do an event, and out of that event, good is coming for the community? They're raising funds, they're collecting toys, canned food drive, whatever, that there is some solid evidence that they're doing something good? Or is it a nonprofit coming to us for a celebration? Is it a open door to the public so that the public can come and participate and in turn help the community raise those funds? Or is it something that is a private invite only event and then they want the fees waived? So I think there should be clear direction on that.
You have information, inside information.
Indeed.
I think there needs to be a fine line because then you're just waiving a party. I hate to say it, you know, like what's the difference in between a nonprofit having a party and a quinceañera coming to me and saying, you know, why do I have to pay? If it's a party, it's a party. But if you're doing something and there's proof that there's something good coming from it,
Yeah.
tell me what the proof is, you know, show us what the proof is. And then, you know, I think that falls under this. So that's just something I would ask you to consider.
I know that Kiwanis have asked a few times for fee waivers, and I know that the funds directly benefit the city of Golden Beach residents.
Are you done? Do we, for the fee waiver currently, do we have like a checklist or anything that they could say, like, maybe a checklist would be?
That's the next point, because you could say, this is why we want it waived.
This is the
This is where it's
criteria
gonna
we're
go.
using.
Yes, we don't have that checklist. That's what the policy is trying to come up
Right.
with.
Okay.
So that's a good point.
Like the criteria.
Yeah, exactly. I threw some out there in the policy. I didn't cover them all in the staff report, but there's a last page, you know, like I said, well, I did mention that they must have a policy showing them to deny people ability to play or pay registration or participation fees if they can't afford it. The fees, imposition of fees would create a financial hardship on the organization. I was only joking when I said like Rotary would never ask for a fee waiver because it would be difficult for Rotary clubs, I don't care how poor they are, to show a financial hardship. There's a lot of generous people that are in Rotary and that would never fly. And then those are the main ones. And, you know, basically what I was trying to get at is that is the request for a fee waiver related to some hardship the organization would have? I mean, sure, a nonprofit wants to keep as much money as it wants to benefit the community, but then how much of that, if it's an organization, it's all volunteers. Like I'll just use my wife's nonprofit as an example. No one gets any money. All the money they raise goes right back to whatever their cause is. But there's other nonprofits that are very, and I don't want to say that's a bad thing. They do other things, but there's some that are very administrative, expense heavy, and they you know, they're not really giving as much back to the community as a volunteer community. So those kind of things is what we were trying to get at. In the criteria, and I'm not sure I succeeded, so I'm so glad we're having this conversation.
Speaking of criteria, meaning when you read the letter from Ms. Boydston,
This is from Shirley Boydston.
You might speak.
An email from Shirley Boydston that was received this morning. Every time a city owned property or facility is used as a venue for an event or project, a cost is incurred by the owner, city of Liberty. Just like cleaning was major or minor. When planning an event, each organization, whether nonprofit, whether for profit or nonprofit, must allot funds in their budget for the use and cleaning costs of the site. In addition to floors, there is labor costs of setting up, installing tables and chairs, etc. Add in utility use, electricity, lights, heating, water, and always bathroom cleanup and restocking of city food. A minimal fee of $50 for each use will help support the costs incurred by city staff. A policy such as put forth by the Tennyson Board seems to be a good solution for its ongoing use concern. Allow no waivers to organizations or groups wishing to use the city facility and no policy to just one business practice.
Sorry. Could, if we had like a set of, let's say, 4 or 5 criteria or 6 criteria that. So let's say, you know, if they're a nonprofit, this event is to help the community. Et cetera, et cetera. Could we do a tiered fee structure where if they only do one thing, then they get 10% off? If they, I know that sounds complicated. But I mean, you have a checklist, so it's, you know, they go do, and then, fine, you know, so then but it would be clear, I mean, if you, yes, it's a little bit more complicated, but. I'm getting looks.
We are, no, regardless of the looks, we are here to serve at the pleasure of the council.
Yes.
If that's the council's pleasure.
Even
It will be our, yeah, don't look at that. We will do what the council wishes, if you think that that's the best approach.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, yeah, you can certainly listen to staff position on it for sure.
I think we have to figure out what criteria.
Yeah, listen to the man behind the curtain.
We need to have in place and in order, and you know, obviously if there's 4 or 5, then it's possibly gonna have a niece, you know, is it gonna pass the smell test? You know, is this something that's, you know, that's we've got 4 or 5 or 5 of 5, and I think we should move with this, and it's a really no-brainer. You can see the organization and the structure and what they're doing within the community as far as, you know, giving back and whatnot, or is it just something just vague?
Yeah, absolutely. And some of these organizations, you know what they do. We all know what they do. We all see what they do. We've all been a part of what they do. So when they come and they say, I'm gonna do XYZ, it's the same thing that they've done for the last, 10 years. It's the same event, maybe just a different venue, or maybe even the same venue. So those are the ones where you're just like, yeah, this is an obvious one. Then there's the where you're not quite sure where the benefit lies.
Right.
And that's where I think the criteria would be even more important to make sure that they meet it. If you want to have something maybe like 6 criteria and you're saying, well, as long as they meet 4, or as long as they meet 5, or maybe you want them to meet all of them, that's up to you how you look at that. On the tiered structure comment, I'm gonna fend for my my employee Esther, who has to deal with this on a daily basis. She's constantly having to crunch the numbers, make sure she's charging all the fees, break it all down for each person.
Feeling pressure.
Feeling the pressure of, people going, well, but do I really have to? Or she'll be like, is there a bounce house? And they're like, oh, no, and so there's always that difficulty there. I'm not sure how many fee waivers we would get. So, maybe if we just get 1 a month, it wouldn't be so bad. If she's getting several, I think the tiered structure might be a little
I hear you.
complicated, yeah. And it's not, I mean, I think it's a great idea and I hear where you're coming from. I feel for her if
Yeah,
she had to
same.
try to figure out that, because it would be for every single charge that she would have to work on all that.
One more thought, what if we didn't require people to apply for the fee waiver, but we just gave it to them if they met these criteria?
Okay,
Well, that would be up to you guys.
yeah, let me go back to the tiered comment. I didn't understand that you were placing that burden on staff. I assumed that the full fees would be calculated, the fee waiver would come to the council, and the council would make the decision whether the 4 criteria were met, and then the 25%, or whatever. That's, so I don't think it would be any burden on staff, if that's any comfort to that idea.
I mean, if you wanna do it that way, that's fine.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought she, oh, that's fine. What was your other comment you just made about, not the tiered structure? Kind of like ministerial, like the housing now, right? Would take, yeah.
Yeah, it means just in.
Without
you know,
discretion, yeah.
Without council. approval.
Got it.
Yeah, but then you're placing the burden on staff, and then we would probably want to have an appeal available to the council, just to, because we don't want staff being the final word on
And of
things.
course, they're gonna do that.
And of course, it will still come back to you. So that's the only thing I would suggest, that if they didn't like our decision, they would say, well, we'll take it up with the council, you know, and see what happens. So it'd kind of be a waste of time, I think. My gut's telling me.
Other comment, mainly because of like hours. So if a nonprofit is asking for a whole day or 4 hours or 1 hour, like how are you determining whether or not that percentage is even effective for an 8 hour, a 4 hour, a 2 hour, or whatever?
And sometimes it's not just a day, sometimes they need half the day before to set up, the day of, and then half the day, the next day to break down. So it's.
So a percentage doesn't always work either, or a flat rate doesn't always work either because of the hours that they need to pay. So unless we're doing this like on an hourly basis, like maybe 25% off each hour, that might help. Or some sort of flat fee per hour.
Do you ladies that have been speaking, do you have, what would be your ideal situation?
You don't want to ask Ryan that question because I don't want to take away the fees, but I would do it on an hourly basis as far as because that's how much, that's what we have to pay, right? We're paying somebody an hourly wage, we're paying, you know, likes to be on per.
Including setup within that hourly? Yeah. Okay.
Well, that was my thought in a flat rate. If a nonprofit says that, you know, it's gonna be $90 an hour, then there's you know, they get a 40 or 50% discount on that. And then it's clear. That's, you know, unless there's a, you know, they don't have any money at all, then we can have that caveat where then we can waive that.
Right, and I don't know if it would be more helpful for you on your next city council meeting if I bring you a copy of the fees for every facility, because and then I could also maybe have Esther do like a sample of, you know, like if this party was 4 hours at the auditorium, this is what that would look like. I gave Todd a similar breakdown for an event recently. And I broke down every single thing for him.
Right.
And then even what is far to say, you know, let's say they're wanting to waive this particular fee, we can break it down by the people that they want to come. You know, they're saying there's gonna be 100 people, it would only be this much per person. So then it kind of makes a little more sense. Sometimes when you see the number of like, let's say $1,800, you're like, oh my God, that's so much. But if you have 100 people coming and you're gonna get a $500 deposit back if you clean up, then it's only like $13 and something cents a person, you know? So then, you know, could they offset that by just charging each person for the dinner that they're about to eat, or, you know, whatever, which then kind of makes you think a little bit more on what's necessary and what's not necessary. Going back to what you asked, my opinion, I'm right there with Denise. I don't think we should waive the fees. I feel like the rec department needs the funds that they get. It improves our venues, it keeps them up to date. It ensures that everything is working and running so that it doesn't get worn down. And I feel like the nonprofit fees that are set in place as of right now are sufficient, if you're asking my particular opinion.
Comments? We're not, you're just, you gotta put this down in terms of a draft policy or?
Well, we have a draft policy that's kind of before you. It's just a starting place. I'm trying to take in what you're saying. At the end of your deliberation, I wanted to go over a few points to try to kind of hone it better, but I was gonna wait till you were finished.
One more thing. Well, there'd be a couple more things, but when it comes to, say, they're not having a fundraiser, they're gonna have a party. Then that shifts. Because on that checklist, what are you doing? We're just having a social, no invite, it's only a club thing. We're not generating any money, nobody's being charged. They're just coming to have a year, I know that, and I'm talking right now about it's their 50th year anniversary. So it's a gathering, which is great, because they do a good job, but it's not, there isn't a profit, they're not making money to provide a service.
Yeah, as you said, that we did have some insider information that, we weren't ready to necessarily reveal. But we have, with respect to that particular request, it may not meet some of these criteria. So we wanted you to be aware of that, glad it came out and we had some discussion about it. Ultimate decision is still yours. We're just trying to help you, I think, come up with agreed upon criteria that when a fee waiver, if you're gonna entertain fee waivers, which I think you probably are, there may be some deserving times where that's required or necessary. That you have a list of things to look at and then analyze instead of just kind of have to go off of your guts. Just that's what we're trying to do with this policy. Give you some guidance, I guess, for future decisions.
Okay, any other comments from council? You were gonna wrap it up, or you?
I'd like to wrap it up, yeah, real quick. You already talked about the three types of, I guess, groups, governments, nonprofits, and more amorphous organizations that benefit the Guadalupe community without nonprofit status that may have a financial hardship. So that's a bit of a general category. I want you to think about that when we bring the policy back, if you like that, or if we want to tighten that up. I'm gonna leave it the way it is right now. The criteria right now is, for instance, if it's an organization that involves participants or players, that they have a policy that shows that they do not deny participants and players due to an inability to pay registration or participation fees. And that's a classic example would be like a youth sports league. That would be a condition to granting a waiver, a fee waiver for use of our facilities. Now, I don't know if you like that or not. I didn't hear anyone complain about it, so I'm going to keep it in for the next round. The other criteria would be some showing that the imposition of the fees, I guess the hourly fee essentially, would create a financial hardship on the organization or would have a detrimental effect upon the services provided to the public. Now, it is kind of vague, because they could say, well, every dollar we spend to the city, we can't do our mission. We might want to consider tightening that up or getting rid of that reference and just saying it would create a financial hardship on the organization. I don't know. I'd like to hear what you have to think, say about that. Tonight or another time.
No, I would ask in their note to say, okay, I'm requesting a fee and this is why, this is why we're requesting a waiver fee.
Yeah, well, in terms of the criteria, are we looking that it has that they have a financial hardship if the fees are so high that, maybe they're not gonna raise that much money with this event and the fees are so high that it would kind of, they won't even hold the event in that case. Is that kind of thing we're talking about, or does it have to be the organizations like, still living paycheck to paycheck, so to speak, that any payment is just, problematic for them? Or how would it have a detrimental effect
on the services provided, but I mean, it's okay to leave it general, it's just that if it's too general, then it doesn't really help you when you have to make a decision. Is it on the right track at least? I can maybe work on tightening it up. If anyone have any issues with what I? No. Okay, all right. And then the other things, I think they're no problem. Okay, I will work with Anise about coming up with a tighter policy for our next meeting, hopefully. And maybe we'll have an opportunity to adopt it, or maybe in the meantime, you'll have some time to think about it and come up with some ideas. If you come up with anything you want included before the meeting, you can always email me. One of the reasons we're talking about it now is that the car club has their event. When is that?
June.
It's June. Yeah. Well, we have time.
Yeah.
We don't want to wait too long. We get it done first meeting in May. We have an extra week, I think, so we'll have time to get it to you the first week. And so we'll have the policy in place. It'll be adopted by resolution, take effect immediately. And then if there's, at the very next meeting, we can bring that waiver request forward. We'll obviously, we'll ask them for the written statement, which otherwise I think they've complied with everything.
Yeah, we do have, we have all their forms. I know that they were working on, I believe, the insurance, and they're gonna have alcohol, so I think they were working on starting that process as well. So, yeah.
I have a comment. Are we going to limit these waivers to events longer than X amount of hours?
So, yeah, you're talking about like a 2-day event, we gotta come and set up.
Yeah.
So I kind of just drew up a little bit of a checklist. So you have, obviously you have community service group, charitable fundraising event, hours, sporting event, nonprofit. And then you have this box I just kind of put together called celebration. Is it a birthday dinner, class reunion dinner? Is it an awards banquet dinner? Will there be pre-event preparation that needs to be in order also? That's like a whole separate, checklist. So it's kind of.
Drop down.
It's a very, if you're gonna spend 4 hours the previous night to set up, and I don't think, were you here when we had that situation here in City Hall where we all walked into that?
I don't think that any of them.
You
mean,
it was swimming pool and we needed the floor done.
Oh, yeah, that was.
We actually.
No. Yes, yeah.
We stored their tables from their, whoever they leased the tables out.
To force them to come back.
So, yeah, it was kind of.
Yeah.
Asking when you're mentioning the setup, are you for them getting a discount during the setup hours or not, or where are you going with that?
No, I mean, it's kind of a whole different. I mean, if you're taking 2 days. I mean, it's a 2-day event, so.
But you're blocking it off for somebody else.
Yeah.
I think we set up is because when we have larger events, like a quinceañera, a dinner, something like that, if it's a sporting event, most of the time, it's like day of, they come in maybe an hour or two. I mean, regardless, they pay for every single hour, hourly rate. But, if they have to prep for it, it's normally rather fast. With a quinceañera or any sort of party celebration where it considers a dinner, alcohol, food, that kind of stuff. Generally, they always ask us, hey, can we come in the evening before? And then they don't want to clean up the day of because they're all, they're done with their celebration, they want to go home, and then they have to come back the next day. So oftentimes it can take up to 3 days if they do say like, well, can we come in at noon on the third day to clean up? Because we don't want to come first thing in the morning because we'll be tired. That does per se hog the venue, and then I can't do anything else with that venue during that time. Now, yes, they're paying the hourly rate, but that hourly rate doesn't cover the fact that I can't have a drop-in, or I can't have the basketball team cover the wrestling team, or or I can't even do something myself for the community, like a class or something like that.
So that would be kind of like the scope of the event. you know, if it's gonna increase that, you know, you're gonna have a prior day setup. The day of the event. Okay, after that day event, everybody's tired and, the usage of the kitchen. Like, okay, well, we'll just clean up in the morning.
Right.
That's, I mean, that's a big scope. That's a huge event.
Do we not have a policy for that? Like, if we say that they're, you know, like, don't they have to be out by a certain time? Like, let's say it's a King's Day and they come in on the day before, they should pay like a half day rate or hour.
Yeah, so they pay hourly, so.
And then like,
So all the time that the venue is being
Blocked, yeah.
blocked, they have to pay for it. So yes, you're getting money for it, but I guess the way I look at it is it also deters me from being able to do something for the community or have another group in there during those hours where they just don't want to come and clean it until a later time.
so like if they don't clean it, let's just say, I'm just curious, do they pay the 8, you know, 8 in the morning to 9, 9 to 10? Do they pay all that?
Yeah, they pay those hours.
Then I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I think that's
You're getting
fine.
money.
I mean, yeah, because it could be not rented. You know what I mean? Yeah, we could absolutely do something else, but it's rented, so I just wanna make sure that.
Yeah, you just have to think to yourself, do you want to be waiving a fee or even discounting a fee in those situations is what I'm getting at. Yes, yes, you're getting the $90 from a for-profit or a group that is paying full prices, but if you guys are deciding to waive a fee on an event that is a 2.5 day event, you know,
That's a
Friday drop in, half of Friday to set up, all of Saturday for the event. Half of Sunday to then again break down. I think that's what Janice was kind of coming at.
Maybe we can put in something that's like active hours, say you're a nonprofit and, you know, so it's active cleanup hours, but if you're just have stuff there, you're paying full price.
Right, the other thing you could consider is maybe this only applies to events that take up no more than 8 hours, or, you know, like say like start to finish, set up and break down, you get it waived if this, and I hate to say it, but you know, you get the benefit, but at the same time, yeah, you better have a setup crew that's a big enough crew that can do it in a timely manner, and a breakdown crew that after the party still wants to stay and clean up. And so you're getting the benefit of a waiver, but at the same time, you need to give back something, which is stay within a reasonable amount of hours so that you're not taking the venue. And yeah, you know, some people are paying, but I guess the way I look at it is I want to give the community as many events as possible. And if on a Sunday stuff is just sitting in there and they don't want to come and clean up till 1, even though they're paying hourly, that means that I can't hold a class for the kids, or I can't have kids go in there and use the basketball courts and things like that.
So real quick, I mean, I don't know if in that master fee schedule, if, say, there's the event Saturday, say there's prep time of 3 hours on 6 o'clock to 9. Event Saturday, Sunday, they feel that they want to clean, and then actually Monday, the guys not gonna finish the tables and the cloth for the tables and the chairs or whatever they needed for that special event. I mean, that's. What is that on?
So the idea though is when they're out, everything is out.
So
So you can't just leave stuff.
a type of event of that size on a weekend, is that charged a little more than something that was gonna be happening on the weekday that's only 2 hours?
So the only time the prices vary is during business hours and off business hours. During business hours, let's say if I'm there, so you know, I'm not gonna have a building attendant, I'm the building attendant, I'm gonna check on them. So the rate is a certain rate during business hours, 9 to 5, I believe it is, or 9 to 4, or something like that. After business hours, the hourly rate is higher because we do have to have a building attendant and there is added cost. So
Weekends would be higher, correct?
yeah, I believe all Saturday and actually part of Saturday, Eddie's schedule as of right now, he works part of Saturday, I think up to 3 o'clock, I wanna say.
Right.
So as long as he's working, we keep it with the working business hour rate. But if they end at 6 o'clock, from
Right.
3 to 6 o'clock, they pay the higher rate.
It's like going to a hotel and you get weekday rates, and then on the weekends. it's bumped
Yeah.
up.
On Sunday, for sure, no one works, so that they're always paying that higher hourly rate. So I know it's a lot to think about, and there's a lot of pieces, and I'm sure you guys are all exhausted, but
Yeah, I thought the housing element was.
that's kind of what you get a little feel for what we deal with in the recreation department, and especially what Esther deals with, because she's our facility coordinator, and like breaking down all the prices and doing all the hours, and that's why she has to say, well, is this before hours? Is this after hours? Is Eddie gonna be here? Is he not gonna be here? Maybe he takes Saturday off, so it's technically gonna be all the higher rate. So there's a lot of factors and a lot of things that we already have to consider, and so it just makes changes more difficult.
Just another comment, I did learn a lot in the aging presentation, as that was great. So that was my favorite today.
One last thing for me, when drafting the criteria, does the waiver for an event have to be beneficial to the community? The event itself has to be beneficial to the community, or funds raised will be beneficial to the
Yeah.
community?
Yeah.
There has to be some connection. I mean, again, like if it's a private gathering, we're using that as an example, we're using a private gathering that's not raising money. The organization does good, but it's not, that event is unrelated to what the organization's mission is, but is that something we're trying to? Yeah, and that's where that checklist would come in.
Okay, right, it's not,
You gotta, yeah, is it a fundraiser for? Yeah.
not because I
Right.
just know somebody.
Right,
yeah.
There will be times where it's close call that you might have to make a decision, but I think I got what you're coming from now, so. The other thing is that we did, talking about it, that request going to us as opposed to the commission. Yes. So is that agreeable with the council?
Sure.
Okay, we got that one, Chuck.
Any other comments? Future agenda item. Thank you, and he said, all of you said.
So I still suppose the policy.
No announcements, council activity reports. Anything?
I attended the FFA first fashion show. My daughter was able to participate. It was a beautiful event, great exposure to art. This weekend also, my son, along with 3 other students from Guadalupe, will showcase their film at the Slow Film Festival. Filmmakers of Tomorrow showcase. Congratulations. So we'll be attending, I believe, this Sunday, yeah.
And
Is it at the Fremont?
Fremont. It must be, I think it is.
It's probably at the Fremont.
Yeah.
Big event happening. I also found out that, this year's Day of Hope ambassador is Eileen Ongo. She is a beacon of hope for others. Similar health battles. Eileen recently celebrated her incredible achievement in completing radiation therapy at Mission Hope Cancer Center, and she is also a resident of Guadalupe, a lifelong resident. Also, please stay local and directly support Mission Hope Cancer Center in Santa Maria. So if you see Eileen out there, just show your support.
Do we get her information for public safety? Thank you.
Anything? Whitney? anything?
Christina, was it the numbers on Saturday? Was it good attendance and?
Was there?
So it was working. There we go. The fashion show was a collaboration between FSA and the recreation department. Although I will give kudos to FSA and NUPO, like obviously huge creative art that he put on. It looked beautiful. I have pictures that I can share with you guys of the different decorations and things, and crazy artwork that he did on produce boxes along with Stephanie. I mean, I thought they were printed sheets of paper and glued on, and then the closer I got, I realized it was all hand painted detail. They're all logos from previous, I believe it's
Farm Ag.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly, like really, really beautiful. I feel like the attendance was good for a very first time fashion show in Guadalupe. Also with the competition, I don't think it's any bad way, but the competition of Kiwanis having their event on the same day. We are such a small town that anytime there's 2 events in one day, it makes it rough because people have to pick and choose and, you know, it's like, do I go here, do I go there, or do I try to go there for half the time and here half the time? So there was that. I'm sure that Kiwanis, knowing the Queen candidate, schedules and how that all works personally, they probably picked those dates way ahead of time. So it just happened to work out that way. But I feel like it was an awesome collaboration. It was great to see all the designers come out. There weren't too many designers. Newful actually, I think, took the award for the most amount of clothing that went out. I mean, he brought a huge rack of clothes that he himself designs and sews. And all the models got to choose what they wanted to wear and how they wanted to put it together. No one was necessarily telling them. There were only a few outfits where, you know, the top and the bottom had to match. But otherwise, everyone got to kind of be creative in that sense, which I think is really cool. And being the stage manager, it was just cool to see the excitement of all the models and see how much fun they were having. We had a couple elderly ladies from the community and from the audience come up and say, I'm wearing something I sewed, can I walk? And so that was really cool. And I would say they were probably 65 plus.
Oh, they're young.
I mean, I don't like, they were probably a little bit older, but I don't want to be rude if they're listening. But within that 65 to like probably 85 category, and I think it was awesome that not only were they wearing something that day that they sewed, probably just, I don't think they were even planning on modeling. It was just kind of, you know, a spur of the moment thing. But
Walk on.
it was open to everyone being part of it. And I think that's what made the event successful, at least for the people that were there and the models and the designers, is that everyone could just be a part of it without it being, you know, oh, well, you didn't register, or you didn't, or you know, how much of this did you sew, or did someone help you? You know, any of those kind of fine line details and judgment. Yeah. And her daughter modeled, I have a picture of her modeling. Yeah, my daughter came, she modeled, Newful modeled, so it was fun to just see everyone just kind of jump in and be part of it. So I think that should definitely be something that we do annually, if not twice a year, maybe spring, fall, or something like that. So I think it'd be fun.
Yeah, sure. Tomorrow, Wednesday, we are, Bobcats, junior high school wrestling team will be hosting Paso Robles, Lamson and Lewis Middle School at 4:30. And,
Where?
At City.
right here at City Hall. And at 4:30 tomorrow, and, it should be pretty packed. I'm a Mackenzie, you know. Yes, we had Chief there actually, and we also did have a match in Atascadero, and Gene drove our Mackenzie wrestlers down there in the bus. And a lot of kids are having fun and doing well, so come out and support us. You'll be amazed at these kids, all sort of the time they're learning a lot about themselves and how to compete.
We recommended about Friday.
Oh, yes, Friday we'll be at Mesa Middle School in the Pomo. We have a duel there at 4:30. It's going quick. Be back here next Wednesday, first, our last home duel.
I had the pleasure of addressing the grand jury Monday here. It was positive.
Nice.
So the word out there, it's positive, it was positive. So, yeah. And I wasn't the only one here, and I know they kicked Patrick out because he wanted to stay in and listen, but. No, it was a good event. They're happy with our progress. So thanks staff for filling in all the different information. I had to figure out what are they gonna ask? And
So many.
12 or 14, all with computers and.
Life detector test.
It was good. And the notice, it was good. Grand jury, sometimes they say, oh, grand jury in Guadalupe again. This time it was very positive, so. Good. And that's all. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'm looking for it.
Second,
I second.
all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Blame it on Denise. Or Anita. Blame it on. Is that shut off? Blame it on Denise.
Eighteen.
Yeah.
So the Wild Hogs MC can't have anything here, we're not waving pizza on the tag.
Complicated the fee stuff. I mean, that's, it is.
This works here.
We good?
There's.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm not.
And for.
Like,